Shall we begin?
I think we shall.
Okay, well, with every shipper special comes a game. And this game is Kiss, Mary Kill. And so, Donovan, you're up first here. Kiss,
Okay.
Mary Kill Morbius with the suckers on his hands, Old Man Vulture, or Saliva Problem Venom?
I just knew they all be men.
They always have to be.
That's not very fun for me. I don't kiss that way. Well, let's see. Handsucker Morbius,
Hmm.
old saliva tonguing vulture,
What?
or or sharp tooth venom. Oh man.
Kiss, Mary Kill.
I just threw what I had in my hand across the room and buried my face in my
I bet
palm.
you did.
God.
You
Oh,
always seem to struggle with these. I was listening back to last year's where I said about Tim, Jason, and Dick, and you're like going through and giving really scientific,
I don't
commentary
want to
on why you
like
choose it.
I don't want to phone in an answer and not take it seriously.
Well, I'm glad you're not. That's why I have you on here.
So it's just so I can proportionally determine which one of these supervillains I would want. Okay. Uh, so it's Kiss, Kiss Venom, kill Vulture, and marry Morbius.
Wow. Why do you want to marry Morbius?
Well, I could deal with him the best.
Oh.
I hate the Vulture. He's my least favorite villain.
Oh, okay.
And Venom, I could like at least one kiss and one time, and I would never have to deal with him again.
Hmm. Interesting. Maybe you'll get superpowers like that. What was that? Kiss XX? XXX Kiss? Anime?
What?
That anime where the person gets superpowers from the saliva? Mystery Girl
Oh,
X?
Mystery Girl X. Yes.
Maybe you'll
Oh
get
man.
superpowers.
And I have to like have a drop of her saliva every day, or else he'll like start to get sick. Maybe that will happen. Yeah, but like yeah, hopefully that will happen. Otherwise, my eyes will turn red, and I'll say
Hopefully that will
Felicia
happen.
every day.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
What about you?
I have a soft spot for Venom, so I think I might marry him.
Excellent.
Kiss Morbius and kill Old Man Vulture.
All right. Excellent.
So, yeah, of all those. Originally, I was actually going to be nice to you. I don't know what happened. But I was going to do obscure females, but then I thought, nah, he wouldn't have fun with that. So I went with these guys.
I wouldn't have fun with women. Men would be, yeah.
Yes, of course. Of course.
You're a sick one,
I know.
Stella.
I know.
Gotham City, like any other large metropolis, abounds in girls of all shapes and sizes. Debutantes, nurses, stenographers, and librarians.
Gotham City Library, Miss Gordon speaking.
Lopez hair removal. This is Jose.
Holy transformation. 1 minute, plain Barbara Gordon, librarian and Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And the next minute, something new has been added. Batgirl, modeled after her idol, Batman.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Capes Crusaders.
It took me 3 years to track down the Jade Gato, and 3 more to figure out how to steal it.
Funny, it only took me 10 minutes to figure out how to snatch it back. No matter how you do it, crime doesn't pay, girls.
What? I'm your host, Stella, and this is Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 153, the Shipper Special number 7 for February MMXVIII. I love shippers. Let me tell you about shippers.
Get over your own shipping bullshit.
Let me tell you about shippers.
Get over your own shipping bullshit.
Shipper.
I love shippers. Shippers.
Shippers.
Let me tell you about shippers.
Stop talking about that.
Shipper.
Shippers. I love shippers. Dick and Babs. Dick and Babs. Batman and Catwoman.
There we go for the shippers. Batman's married to the Joker. They're better than be Damien said Stephanie shippers. I'll kill them.
Dick and Babs. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by questions we don't have answers. Why are you so surprised I'm promoting your show?
With nary a snide remark left.
Well, I didn't say anything at all. Normally I do say something, but that one I just dropped it and moved on.
White privilege. What is that?
Does skin color really have any bearing on who you are as a person?
So upset that we don't want to see cops killing unarmed people in the streets of America. Like, why?
The ET Awards were last night. Notably, they were very black. Oh, but can I say that?
I think there's a difference between having a point of view and being a partisan.
Are we trying to kill him or scare him? Killing is scary.
Names, no number, just straight pleasure.
No, I don't condone it, but I understand.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. Because it's early on when you make the big mistakes that cost you millions down the road.
One of the things that we all have in common is that we all draw a line somewhere.
Questions We Don't Have Answers. It's a podcast dedicated to tackling society's most quizzical queries and persistent problems. Each episode sees host Donovan Grant.
So you're having a non-minority represent a minority and tell the story of a minority, but not with an actual minority.
And Harrison Chu.
Essentially how you can have your cake and eat it too, but I really wish you wouldn't.
As they confront questions that afflict our everyday existence, such as, can war end?
I don't know.
Is there a morality to sexual fantasies?
I don't know.
When is killing justified?
I don't know.
Are there things comedians shouldn't joke about?
I don't know.
Can you be outraged on other people's behalf?
I don't know.
Nobody knows everything, but everyone knows something. Society's ills will be fought by that society. Become a creative contributor to the show by sending in a question or providing your voice and opinion on an existing episode.
People are just so afraid of being thought of as assholes when everybody already thinks of them as assholes. It's amazing.
That sounds like a Facebook quote. Questions will be asked, and answers will be questioned. So join Donovan and Harry as they invite you each week for a discussion of questions we don't have answers.
You didn't even talk about Japan in this one. I think they did well.
The show can be found at questionsnoanswers.com, on iTunes, and write into the show at qnoanswers@gmail.com.
I just hope it's not boring to listen to. Like, oh my god, they're not going anywhere. Truly, they don't have answers.
Well, I can also mention more Star Trek episodes.
Batgirl the Oracle is also brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. But if you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So, if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out MileHighComics.com. While Dustin's been pretty mean to me as of late, and he's been lying about things, I'll still promote the Batman universe by saying Batgirl the Oracle is a proud member of the Batman Universe family of podcasts, hashtag TBU family, maybe less proud than normal. And you can also, if you want to, support that liar and subscribe to the show on Patreon by going to thebatmanuniverse.net.
Are you saying Professor Dustin is a jerk?
Oh, yes. I am, yes. Now, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the Comic Cast, or, other people who listen to the show might not listen to that one, or vice versa. But at one point, we were talking about long shows, and basically, we all agree that, yes, occasionally I have long shows, and usually it's adding someone else usually doubles the time. And I was regretful about this because I know some people are, whatever. and Dustin was making fun of me about the length of the shows, and I was like, I'll show you, my next show will be, 70 minutes. And then the next episode of the Comic Cast, he said, no, Stella, you're wrong. We love your long shows. It was you who didn't, and it was terrible. Ed was with me. He's like, are we in Upside Down world? And now, online, he doesn't apologize to me for... I had a 70-minute show, and he didn't apologize to me. So we're on the outs right now. But I'm still podcasting with him, so oh well.
It's a shame. Terrible shame.
Oh, man. Oh, well, guys, you know that steady as a stream, we have a shipper special. And this is number 7. I mean, we're just getting up there here. And, of course, I have to have my steady Eddie with me when we do this. My good and dear friend, Donovan Morgan Grant.
Hello.
He reminded me of Dustin on Stranger Things Season 2.
I know Dustin ran a podcast and was an actor.
Yes, of course. Now, Don, you are now 10 weeks along, and your baby dinosaur, your baby Dilophosaurus, is about the size of a kumquat.
I knew you were going to do this.
Your baby now weighs less than 1/4 of an ounce and is a little over an inch long from head, little, those little things on the Dilophosaurus, to bottom, its little tail. Don, I mean, catch us up. What's the progress? Have you been okay? Have you been treating yourself well? How has your family been? Have they been supportive?
I've been trying to drown this thing in my body with alcohol and candy.
Oh my gosh!
Well, I did go to the ultrasound and see what it looked like, and I don't know why a dinosaur looks like a porg, but it is a very peculiar looking thing. So, at night sweats and going to the bathroom all the time, and often vomiting, and I'm really happy to get rid of it.
Once it gets out. I tell people about this, and they can't
I know you do!
I know, and they can't really, separate sort of the fact from the fiction, which is really interesting. And also, whenever I update you, I remember the last time I laughed out loud when I was reading the text. I said something like, can you believe you've got, a little raspberry in there? And you said, no, only because you tell me. So, but it's good to have friends like us, I think. Did you see they're having a pop fig of a Dilophosaurus. I tagged you on Facebook.
Yes.
So that's super exciting.
How long, this has been that was back in November.
It was back in November.
When it happened. And
the conception date, I can look it up on my phone. I'm keeping track of it. I get bi-weekly updates on the progress of your child.
Your bi-weekly update.
The 18th of November.
Is this in human biology or Dilophosaurus biology? How fast do eggs come out of a Dilophosaurus?
Oh boy, I don't know. But we're going by human biology.
I think last time I was on, you said you weren't sure if I was human. No, you said man or woman. Who knows what Donovan is? I thought that were a question.
I don't think. I think you're misquoting me. I said man or I think I was talking about the Dilophosaurus.
You better have been talking about that dinosaur.
As if there's a question.
You can't tell. Yes, I present myself as male, but I sure hope that you're excited for this thing because you're taking care of it. You've proven yourself to be the most interested in its life cycle. So,
sure?
Yeah, I hope you have a room in your hovel for a reptile of its size. So, and if you don't, make room.
Okay, sounds good. I'm so excited for a roommate. Oh.
This is what I get for 7 years of bad luck. Every year, just trolled and ruined and.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of 7 years, I would like you to introduce what our shipper topic is this year.
Yes, every year you and I just kind of have a little mini powwow about what should we do this year, and sometimes we'll discuss ideas that we end up doing later on. Like I think sometimes some ones we've done in the past, we discussed those maybe a year or two before we did them, and some we still haven't done yet. And this one, I feel it was not so much spontaneous, but when we were talking about this in 2017. It was, I think, the first time we brought this up, maybe, and I think we were both really into it because it would be fun and new and different, and also nothing to do with Batgirl, but also something that we both had expertise on. And the subject matter actually is primarily and singularly the impetus for you and I meeting. We are going. The subject for this year's Shipper Spotlight is the astonishing, sensational, spectacular, amazing web of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, indeed. Now that was his perspective on how that went down. I would like to tell you my perspective on how all this went down here, because I find it really funny. So we, in fact, do communicate about this several months in advance, because it's always sort of on my radar. It's one of my favorite things to do on BTO each year. And so we're considering, and we keep coming back to this one DC title that we have yet to do, and so I thought that this would be the year. And then Don drops, Spider-Man, and, he considers that. And then we had that conversation, and I thought we were leaning back to the DC property, and I said, you choose. And all of a sudden, it's like when you're having a conversation, you expect it to go one way, but it goes the complete other way. He's like, let's do Spider-Man. And basically, I was like, okay.
I don't want to twist your arm or anything, but you seem pretty happy.
No, you didn't twist your arm. I just found it really amusing that I was thinking we were on the track of the DC, and they're like, you know what? Let's do Spider-Man. I'm like, well, that's fine. I love Spider-Man. So here we are to do the Spider-Man. So that means that next year, even though Don has some sick ideas about doing Simpsons, we shall be doing something of my evil choosing.
Famous last words.
I know. Well, before we do this, I think because we're doing a topic that is not DC related, not anime related, people may know of him, hopefully. I think it's important to get an understanding or perspective of where we're coming personally with our history of Spider-Man. So I thought it would be good to just go through and how we got introduced with Spider-Man and, stuff we've read or watched, things like that. Vaguely, not specifically.
Well, yeah, because I mean, in all the years we've known each other and, our mutual acquaintances in Spider-Man Crawl Space, we were never actually on the Crawl Space both at once, which is kind of ironic. But you're asking for basically our familiarity with him?
Sure, yeah, and how he was introduced to you?
Yeah. I said this story before, but not often enough. I remember being exposed to Spider-Man in the back of a magazine where it was a summer when the 1994 cartoon was about to come out, and I remember it was KB Toys had the 90s show Toys come out in anticipation for the cartoon. And I remember thinking, I was 5 at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, Spider-Man, this brand new character that they've just now created, this sounds really interesting. So I was really into the toys, and I watched the 94 cartoon the day it premiered almost 25 years ago. And that led me to be into the comics at the time. And in 1994, Spider-Man was going through everyone's favorite story from Spider-Man's history, the Clone Saga. So I began, wherever I could, to read the Clone Saga, which was the comics at the time. My love for Spider-Man carried over from the 90s show, which I to this day I still absolutely adore, to old reruns of the 70s show, which I've since bought, to the MTV show, which came in between the first and second movies, which everyone loves. He is, when Batman is not my favorite superhero of all time, it's Spider-Man. And of course, I would say that I have more intimate familiarity with Batman comics, but if you were to look at my comic collection right now, my trade collection that's kind of done on my shelf, it is split down the middle. Like on the one side you have Spider-Man, on the other side you have Batman, and all the other stuff like Superman and Daredevil and the Avengers and all the everything else is sort of in between. It really is sort of the majority. My favorite comic book of all time out of all my collections is the Spider-Man Batman crossover in the 90s, which actually podcast is on. Will come out sometime in February, I guess this month when this comes out. And I think the majority of the podcasts I've been on have been Spider-Man related. The first podcast was about the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon. Then it was Clone Saga Chronicles. Then it was Amazing Spider-Man Classics. Then it was Spider-Man Crawl Space. the episode where we talked about Spider-Man Homecoming on the Comic Film Review was, I think, our longest episode ever. We had a lot of discussion on that. And yeah, he's just a hero that like I can't help but just kind of always come back to. I've read the overwhelming majority of Amazing Spider-Man, not every issue, but like most of it. And I have every essential they ever printed of the Amazing Spider-Man title. And I mean, like, I love the character, and like, of course, he's a character that's been that a lot of people have different opinions on, and I foremost among them. But like, I like to think that like my opinions are unique to myself. But we'll see when it comes to like his love life and everything. So. Whoa, as Dan Slott would say.
Or Dan Slott a la whatchamacallit?
Bertoni?
Yes, that guy.
But that is, when Spider-Man is not an arbitrary choice, I mean, he is, half of the week my favorite superhero of all time, and that's why I loves him. But what about you, Miss Batgirl?
Yeah, I know. It's really interesting because I think I was going on a run yesterday, and I was simultaneously listening to Josh and thanks for the spoiler, their little coverage of DC and DC, and thinking about that's what I call Spoiler Kid is what I call him, and considering sort of my love affair with both Spider-Man and Batgirl and how I would describe it, because Spider-Man was my first love of any superhero, and so I think it very much has this really special place in my heart that can never be overturned or overwritten, just as I think any first is. And then Batgirl for me is, I think, a very like almost a slow burning love affair that has turned into something that I'm extremely dedicated to and love her through and through. So it's hard to describe them. So now, I've gone from when students or other people ask who's your number one superhero, knee-jerk is always Spider-Man, to now it's like, I say Spider-Man, and I'm like, well, also Batgirl. But it's hard because Batgirl, you have to explain, like, Barbara Gordon, because I really want to say Barbara Gordon, right? But then they're like, who's that? So then you have to say Batgirl. But Spider-Man, gosh, I somehow knew of him very early on, and I think perhaps from 60s reruns, because we had this cat. I vividly recall this. You know how you're a child, you remember some of these things. Going on a walk, I was in a stroller, so that's how young I was, and we found this kitten on the road, and we ended up taking the kitten home, which, not necessarily you should do, but that happened twice in my life. And so we brought it home, but of course, it probably had worms and things like that, so we left it outside. So it actually really wanted to get inside the house, and it climbed up the outside brick wall, I kid you not, to the top of like the keystone basically of the door in order to potentially like jump on someone and be carried inside or something like that. So thus we called him Spider-Man. And that was basically not the first pet, but I think the first cat that really I ever had. So it all started from there. I think the 90s, I had been aware of Spider-Man, goes to my origin story with reading those sort of fleet cards or Fleer cards, that had a superhero and then on the back had some sort of statistics on them. I would be read to prior to going to sleep at a nap time, and reading here and there, but I think the 90s television series really cemented that love for me. And whenever I went to comic shops, I would look through the Spider-Man box and just look for cool covers and get those stories, which of course, is hard because you're just picking out cool covers and then you've got like a really out of context story now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I've just really enjoyed him. And so I got back I really started reading comics in Civil War, and I really enjoyed the journey that Peter Parker Spider-Man was on at that time. And so went from there to Back in Black, and then tragically turned into One More Day, and then was on this is almost my podcasting origin story as well. Then was on Spider-Man Crawl Space and continued for a while, but the stories were dragging down my love of the character, and that's something that you can't let that happen to you. So I decided to step away from the current writing, but not necessarily the character. So I've recently it's been a little while, I've been on a break because I've been distracted, but I had started from issue number 1. I've been going on, and I'm close to 300 now, and it's like really revivified my love of the character, and it's been really great to start from the beginning and reading now and in the 80s, I guess. So yeah, the movies, I really love them. I would always defend them. Even Spider-Man number 3, I would defend it. I would get upset when people would critique it. Tom Holland, he's growing on me, I promise. But, you know, I really have a special place in my heart for Tobey Maguire, absolutely, because that was the first, seeing Spider-Man on the big screen, live action, like, that's going to be your Spider-Man for a long time. And then Andrew Garfield was a little, like, controversial, but then seeing him, I'm like, oh, I like Andrew Garfield. So it's been hard to have reboot after reboot, but it's great to have a character that you can see on the big screen. So yeah, he's been with me for a very long time.
Yeah, we talked about that, like you and I, about like the constant changes of Spider-Man. I like all the Spider-Man movies, honestly. Like even Spider-Man 3, even Amazing Spider-Man 2, even Homecoming. And Homecoming is probably my least favorite, but like I've not disliked a Spider-Man film because I don't think I'm capable of doing that. But we talked about like when we talked about like Homecoming on the comic film review plug that we did compare Tom Holland to how he ranked against Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. That was a pretty fun discussion.
Yeah, it really is apples and oranges for me. They're just very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ooh, boy. Any other questions we should do? Yeah, I know. As we get into the rankings here.
Well, I'm always, as fun and indulgent as this is, I'm always a little concerned how people might take to our subject matter. I think the most obscure thing we talked about was like a toss between Robotech and Uron, which too bad. But like with Spider-Man, I think that you and I agreed that it was kind of like anything goes. So we might mention comics, we might mention shows, movies. So I think that like
video
we'll try
games.
Really?
I got the Sega. Yeah, the Sega Genesis, of course.
Well, I don't think that's on my list, but like
that'd be funny. It's my number 1.
Spider-Man: The X-Men vs. Arcade.
Yes.
The worst game ever. I would just say that like I'll do my best to although I think that like my choices are all kind of concrete. I'll do my best to kind of explain and provide context, as I always try to do.
Sounds good. I didn't look back to see who went first last time. I think I had the last deciding one. Do you want to be the last number 1? So do you want me to start here?
Sure, yeah.
Or do you want to start? It's up to you. I usually alternate.
I don't remember either, but I do remember the last one when I was like sobbing about Pearl and Rose on Steven Universe. I think you ended the show talking about the movie, which I of name forgot. But so we could switch up this time.
Yeah, Imagine You and Me was the movie. That was a time that I was a good friend because I didn't make fun of you at all.
Yeah, that week that you didn't.
That week, oh, Donovan. I will say that I want to explain something because I wonder if this is true of you, that my rankings are my personal rankings.
Oh, sure,
And these are ones that I really, from like to love, basically, and not necessarily in order of art form. Because clearly there are some that are misordered that maybe one should be higher because it is probably better presented, but for the feels that it gives me, it's a little lower. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. This is nowhere near like the best moments. It's just,
sure.
Personal, yeah, the feels.
Yeah, the feels, yes.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big day. Wherever there's a hang, you'll find a Spider-Man.
I would like to start with, I have 2 honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm.
Should I just spit them out both?
Yeah, I think I'll probably get to those as I go down my list, but like, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
I mean,
So how are you gonna do it?
Things that came to mind as I was kind of listing them, or things that were similar to the ones in, like, well, my honorable mention is this because my number 3 is this or whatever. But that's my own like, buggy
Okay.
brain.
I think I'll only mention one because I'm actually 90% certain that the other one's on your list, so I'll talk about it some other time. But one of them that didn't make it was the Spectacular Spider-Man series, and it was really close because I really love that series, and there's some really wonderful moments. And if you haven't seen it, it just ran for 2 seasons from 2008 to 2009. Just really well done, and something that I hope could be revivified. I think the main reason why it was taken down was, the Sony Marvel issue, but now that Disney owns, well, I guess we'll see. Plus, it gives me hope that Young Justice is revivified. But anyways, specifically the season finale of season 1, it was episode 13, Nature versus Nurture. And it's just a big moment for Gwen and Peter, and specifically Gwen just being brave enough to show her feelings or reveal her feelings to Peter and put it all out there. And that's what
Gwen.
I know, and it starts the catalyst because season 2 there's so much confusion on the side of Peter. He's dating Liz, but clearly he has feelings for Gwen, and then it ends, unfortunately, the season ends in a really bad place because Peter's ready to share his feelings, and then of course Gwen's, helping out good old Harry, who's got his issues. So it didn't quite make it, but that would have been, it was close.
Yeah, I absolutely went back to that show to see if there was anything I kind of plugged from there. Mm-hmm. And it's an honorable mention for me as well because I didn't end up using that on my core list. Because I feel that I mean, if it had it more seasons, it might have gotten a bit more focused. But like the romantic subplots really were subplots. Which is it kind of prevented me from putting it on a top 5 list. But yeah, I actually forgotten that he went out with Liz and stuff. But yeah, like the season 1 finale, and I love the season 2 finale where the love triangle between him and Gwen and Harry was great.
Yep.
So I really enjoyed that too. I'll actually throw up my honorable mention right now. The Amazing Spider-Man films.
Okay.
Specifically, well, I guess yeah, both 1 and 2 because I genuinely adored the Peter and Gwen relationship in that one. You're not going to see any Gwen pics on my. Well, you might actually.
Betrayal.
No, not a betrayal. Come on. Well, I'll take that back because I may have spoken too soon. But I think not to start a conversation, but I think that this sort of revival of Gwen's popularity, or I should say the start of Gwen's popularity right now really stems from Emma Stone's portrayal. Of course, she and Andrew Garfield were dating during those films, but the chemistry is just unbeatable in those 2 movies. And I was watching scenes from the first one where he's fighting the lizard, and he pulls the reins. He's like, "I'm gonna throw you off the roof now." She's like, "What?" And he tosses her off and swings her around. And the second one where he webs her hand to the car, and she yells, "Peter!" Then smacks her mouth shut. They had just great, terrific moments, and you really believed in the relationship, more so than others, I think. So, those are my honorable mentions from the media.
Poor Gwen. I guess we'll have to end this with the discussion of Gwen versus Mary Jane.
Ooh! Where are my brass knuckles?
My cestus. Okay.
Pistols at dawn.
So yeah, I will give my number 5 then. And it's actually from the classic Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Excellent.
Which began in 1994, but this one I'm looking at 1997. It's the season 4 episode The Lizard King, which was episode 10. And Peter proposes, and Mary Jane ends up accepting. Of course, Anna Watson doesn't like this at all. And of course, it's not like a happy little uplifting episode right off the bat, because Kirk Connors gets into some difficulty because there are 3 giant lizards who end up kidnapping him. Then Mary Jane and Martha Connors are working together along with Spider-Man to help that whole situation out. And it's funny because at the end Spider-Man says, with all my powers it took 2 normal women to take down the lizard.
I've never been so ashamed.
I know. And then Mary Jane's like, what's wrong with that? But what's nice is I think there's just, number one, it's coming right after Spider-Man revealed his identity to Mary Jane, because I think the episode before is The Haunting of Mary Jane with all that bizarre robot actress lady. That also, yeah. So there's trust built in this episode, as well as I think using the Martha and Kurt Connors relationship to show the dangers of what a potential relationship could be between Mary Jane and Peter, but really what love can do because of what Martha is doing to try and help her husband. And I think Mary Jane learns so much from Martha about that. And then at the very end, you have this lovely scene between Peter and Mary Jane that Peter recognizes the dangers, but Mary Jane is willing to go along with him and face those dangers together. So it's just a very beautiful thing. Now, the only unfortunate thing is that this is not the true Mary Jane at this time. But we should talk about that. But it's just, yeah, it's great. And I think just to talk about the animated series as a whole is hard because there are some really fun and shipperific episodes, especially with Black Cat, I think. But I had to go, I think, with the Mary Jane one, and it came down to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was another, like when Josh and I were kind of like pre-gaming this, we were thinking like, what about the anime series? And what I remember from that, I reviewed the entire series on the Crawl Space, every episode, so I definitely remember this. But like the biggest thing that I remember is like the episode before, Spider-Man says to Mary Jane, all this danger makes me realize just how much you mean to me. He like touches her face, and she's like, I'm flattered, Spider-Man, but I'm in love with another guy, Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And he's like, yoink! And he just like takes his mask off.
Yep.
And then like he takes her on the top of a gargoyle and says, so that's why I'm Spider-Man. Now, will you marry me? And then she really just jumps off the building. And
I remember. Yep.
He says, why'd you do that? To see if you were always going to be there for me. And you will. I will marry you. It's just like, it's a very hilarious sequence of events. But I enjoy it. It's a good choice.
Yeah.
So I suppose my number 5... It's now time for that. And I will choose one that I kind of settled on.
Do you even know what your list is?
I have it right in front of me.
Well, you're like dancing around. You're saying things that lead me to believe you only created your list 30 minutes ago.
I had to constantly erase them and kind of just start over again. I will say that like you said that like you were looking forward to this topic, but you found it to be frustrating because there's a lot to choose from.
There is. And
I will say that I underestimated that because I was when I came down to it like this week, we decided to like record the day we are like several days ago.
Right.
I was like, okay, let's do this, and I was like, this is actually really tricky. My number 5 is actually was the last one to be figured out. It is Spider-Man the Black Cat from Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man. It's the Bill Mantlo era from like the early 80s. And I'm looking at like actually the issue. I don't know if you've read this, but it's issue 87. The cover to this comic book is Peter taking his mask off, but it's like we're seeing the back of him, and Black Cat is looking horrified. And the Black Cat and Spider-Man relationship is I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's polarizing because the big thing about her is that she likes Spider-Man more than Peter Parker.
Which I brought up in the Tim and Steph and whatchamacallit discussion.
Well, yeah. That's I was actually texting Josh. I'll never mention him again, I promise. But like, I was saying when I was rereading these comics, I was like, this is exactly like Tim and Spoiler back in the.
I told you.
You did. But what happened was that like the lead up to this is that they battled Dr. Octopus and the Owl, and they've been like fighting crime. She's a former cat burglar, and they fall in love with each other, but he's not been honest with who he is. And at one point, they were in a battle, and she got shot up by a bunch of like Doc Ock's henchmen, and she was in the hospital, and that really made Spider-Man realize that he was in love with her. Like he could barely kind of go through school and stuff. He was always like spending time with her and away from his friends and family. And when she got out, they kind of said, we're going to be together. And she's like, okay, now are you going to tell me where you live? And at first he's like, he's like, well, I don't know about that, but like he's like, yeah, what the heck with it. And you see in this issue 87 of Peter Parker, that all the girls that I've ever gone out with, they only liked Peter Parker. Mary Jane, Gwen, Deborah, Whitman, Liz Allen. Like, it's really freeing to be with somebody who likes me for Spider-Man, the person I enjoy being more, even though he makes Peter Parker have a lot of problems. And like when you read this, I mean, Black Cat can be very shallow at times. In fact, she's shallow in this issue. But like she genuinely loves Spider-Man. It's not a put on. It's not a trick. Like she absolutely loves him. So he swings over to like his Chelsea apartment, and they land on his rooftop. And she's like, "Wait, this is where you live?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is like the skylight to my room." And she's like, "I was expecting more of a spider cave or a fortress of Spideytude, not a but bathroom." And like this kind of an early warning sign. So they jump in the apartment. And she's kind of like, you can see on her face, she's looking disgusted. She's like, why aren't you rich? You're Spider-Man. And he's like, well, I was a high school student who lived with my aunt and uncle because I was an orphan. Then I got bitten by a spider, and my uncle got killed when I could have stopped it. And then like he's slowly taking off his mask and says, I'm not Spider-Man for fame and fortune. I don't do it for the thrill or the danger. I do it because of great power, great responsibility. I, Peter Parker. And Black Cat is like, Spider, your mask, please put it back on. But I love you, Black Cat, and I love you, Spider-Man. And like, this actually kind of sounds pathetic and sad, and it is. But like, once he's like, "Oh, I get it. You like Spider-Man more than Peter Parker," and like, she's instantly like on top of him. She's like, "Yes, that's right. You man of mystery." Like, so they're still together for like another 25 issues, and it's interesting because like I think it is when you consider like how much. The women like Peter but don't like Spider-Man. It is interesting seeing that dynamic play out like in earnest. It's not, I mean, it's just different. It's not, kind of a scheme because later on, she goes back and forth on her loyalties and she's with the Puma and stuff. And then like, the mind wipe happened. But like here, she is in absolute head over heels in love with Spider-Man. When they're fighting crime and like swinging through the city, like she's like on cloud 9. But when he's Peter Parker, she's just like can't even look at him. And that's fascinating. So I was rereading this recently and I'm like, this is actually really, really good stuff. So yeah, this is my number 5.
I've actually not spent too much time in Spectacular Spider-Man or Spectacular Peter Parker. Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Okay. Whew! Only with crossovers and things like that, which I regret, but I think I'd be overwhelmed if all of a sudden I'm starting from and I'm seeing everything in the Marvel tie-ins and all of that stuff. Could be overwhelming. So maybe once I read up to the modern era with Amazing Spider-Man, I will go back and do Spec Spidey. This, yeah, whew. This is something I always go back to. I think about this sort of relationship a lot when I'm discussing other heroes. It's sort of like the model that I use as an example because of this duality and the fact that Black Cat loves one but not the other. And, is Peter Parker really that distinct from Spider-Man? I feel like he's not like Batman, but it seems like he's made out to be. just a completely different person. But I do like the Peter Parker Black Cat relationship, or I should say Spider-Man Black Cat relationship. I don't see them as, my one true pair for Spider-Man, but I think that there's certainly like a sensuality about it, and something that, certainly gives me some butterflies. But it's sad that, it's clear that you even said warning signs there. It's clear that they're not meant to be together if she can only accept one half of his identity. And you kind of wonder what he likes her for. I guess there's a camaraderie, and they're able to spend the nightlife together, which it is very similar to Tim and Steph in that way, because Tim and Ariana can't, fly around the rooftops together. So I think they're special in being able to share that part of the life, but not the other part. So that's sad.
Well, yeah, because when you read this stuff, you get that it's a real the relationship has real personality, because he almost lost her and they're risking their lives, and she kind of had a change of she stopped being a criminal and stuff. It's not. I mean, I like a lot of the romances of Spider-Man, but it's not just simple attraction initially. They've been through stuff together. So when he makes this big milestone for her, and it's that that kind of hard turn right, where it's like I like you with your mask on, it's like. Wow, that everyone who kind of knows the Black Cat Spider-Man relationship kind of knows this aspect of it, but when you're reading it, it kind of comes as a surprise, because they're so earnestly in love, and in the moment that she signals that she doesn't like Peter Parker, it's kind of like the red warning flag. Okay, this will never work out, but and it's kind of tragic in that way. I would recommend it. I'm actually reading from Essential Peter Parker Spider-Man Volume 4. Which is, I don't know if it's out of print, but I know they're not doing the essentials anymore. But that's where a lot of the meat of this stuff is, and it's really, really good.
I have some essentials, and then others I have digitally, so that's how I'm reading it. But yeah, I think they're getting rid of essentials and now doing the epic collections.
Yeah, which is interesting, because I love the essentials. I lived by those for years, but I got the Tombstone collection and when he had Cosmic Powers collection. So they've been kind of choice storylines.
Yeah.
But they're more expensive because they're color. I really love the essentials.
Yep.
So gosh.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Well, now on to our number 4s, and this one was tough. 4 and 3, tough for me. Number 4 is a comic, and this is one of those times where my my love for it has ranked it slightly lower than the actual art form potentially deserves. This is Sensational Spider-Man Annual number 1, and it was the annual from 2006 to 2007. It was written by Matt Fraction with art by Salvador Larroca. You know what it is.
You know
what it is. Yeah. So this takes place at a very crucial point, because Spider-Man at this point is back in black, so it's post-Civil War, and he is currently wanted because he switched from the pro-registration side to the anti-registration side, but unfortunately he had already unmasked, so people know who he is. And it's leading into One More Day. So this is almost like the last chance you're going to get for Spider-Man and Mary Jane marriage, or Peter Parker and Mary Jane marriage. What's beautiful about there's several layers of this is beautiful. Number 1 is the fact that both Mary Jane and Peter are in these tricky situations. Mary Jane is actually sort of entrapped, not really entrapped, I guess, but she's a trap is sprung upon her, and they're basically saying, give your husband up right now, he's wanted, by people of S.H.I.E.L.D. And she can have immunity, Aunt May can have immunity. Okay, so we've got that. And then on the other side of town, potentially, Peter Parker goes to someone, a law enforcement officer, and he wants to give himself up in order to get immunity for Mary Jane and Aunt May. So we've got these two different things. So meanwhile, as all of this is happening, both of them are flashing back to certain moments in their poignant moments in their history. Some of them, of course, Gwen is obviously involved there, and the art is lovely because Salvador Larroca is using a Romita-esque flashback sequences to show these moments here. One of them is really cute because Mary J makes a mixtape for Peter Parker, and then she asks him to make one for her, of something that means something to him, and he makes one, but it's of a lecture on, I think it's magnetic forces, and she's like, that wasn't the point of it, but he's also thinking, oh my gosh, magnetic force, there's something underlying about that. So it's this like weird tension of they both like each other, but they're like their signals are getting crossed. And I guess the climax of it was an issue where I think Robbie and Peter are going to go to France, and so this is, I think, the first kiss that Peter and MJ have at the airport, and so you get to see that. Yeah. In the end, Peter is able to free Mary Jane, and then they go up to a highest tower, and they sort of, almost renew their vows, but not really. They just talk about how much they love each other, and it's just sad in the fact that, or poignant, I guess, really emotionally, overwhelming. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful because of the sacrifice, I think the self-sacrifice that Peter's willing to make, the love that Mary Jane shows, and her loyalty to her husband as well as the family with Aunt May, and then the flashbacks and how they got together. It's a really beautiful tale, and one of my favorites. So that's my number 4.
Ooh, I mean, yeah, this was like... it kind of became an unexpected. Like I would hesitate to say it's a classic, but like I remember this came out. This was an instant smash of a story, and I think that like we all knew it was coming. It was such a great celebration of the relationship in a way that like because Matt Fraction's a terrific writer.
Yeah, but I think it was before he was really well known.
I would agree. Yeah, this is before
probably even Iron Fist.
Yeah, because it's 2006. But yeah, he really knocked this out and. Because Mary Jane and Peter's relationship was written, I think, the best in the 2000s, in my opinion. Because whether you like the marriage or not, you have it written before they got married in the 80s. You have it written in the 90s, which was the most prolific, but it was also very stressful because, the Clone Saga and him losing his mind because of the robot parents and him, her being presumed dead. There was a lot of stress going on because of, storytelling. But like in the 2000s, I actually find it to be the best, and that would be reflected on my list. Now, no, I thought this was. I remember reading this for the first time at the original location of my comic store. I was like, "Gosh, this is a really, really, really great story." And I remember, like early on, listening to the Crawl Space a couple years later, people referring back to the story. It's like, "Yeah, I really like that story too." I've not read it too often since then, but like, it's a great choice, and I think that like, and I'm actually kicking myself for not thinking about including it on my list as well.
How dare you? How dare you?
How dare I? Everything I do is a slight. But no, yeah, I'm flipping through right now. This is awesome. Great choice. Great.
Thank you.
Terrific choice. So my number 4. Let's see. I'm trying to like make sure of the ordering. Okay. Yes. I meant.
I'm still convinced you have no idea what you're doing.
I'm not. I don't know what to say. That wouldn't be either like mean or true. My number 4 is it's I won't say it's a trait exactly, but it is like the Black Cat and Spider-Man 1, a series of issues between ASM Volume 2, number 40 through 45, which is Volume 3, until the stars turn cold, and it's basically during the J. Michael Straczynski era, where John Romita Jr. was writing it, and so for context. Mary Jane left Spider-Man at the end of the 90s, or maybe the early 2000s, like before the Straczynski run. Basically, kind of clear head because she had been through a lot, and so they've been separated for a while now. And Peter had at first taken it in stride, but he's increasingly hurting because she's been gone, and Jameis has kind of built this up. And there was this one story where she agreed to kind of come in and visit because she was filming something in New York that they're going to try to talk. May was going to set it up, and Peter and her were going to kind of try to like work things out. And he was very, very nervous about it. And because he's Spider-Man, something happens and he misses it. In fact, he was like, long story short, he's sort of this sort of ghost astral form where time ran differently, and he didn't mean to miss the appointment, but he ended up missing her and kind of like was floating around while she was kind of flying back on her plane and kind of yelling at her that he loves her, but like she couldn't hear him. And that in itself is like very dramatic and sad and beautiful. The last panel is kind of him like just kind of floating in the sky while she flies away. And the next arc, he and Aunt May go to California so he can try to explain and apologize. Unfortunately, Dr. Octopus is there, so a fight ensues between him and a guy called Carlisle. So Peter has to run off to be Spider-Man again, and he's trapped under like a destroyed hotel. And while Doc Ock and the new guy kind of go over to like the Hollywood set where Mary Jane's filming this movie, she's filming a movie called like The Amazing Lobster Man, where she plays the love interest.
Oh my!
Which is pretty awesome. And like she like says, like, "Oh, Peter, if you laugh, I'll kill you," and that kind of stuff. But it's really great. And there's a scene of Peter having to lift the entire hotel to kind of get back and save Aunt May and Mary Jane. There's a scene of Dr. Octopus meeting Aunt May for the first time, and she recognizes that he's been a supervillain. But really, the reason to kind of read this is kind of see more of the sort of this subtle hurt that's going on between Peter and Mary Jane at the time. And the last page I really like, where he apologizes and she's like, "I understand you're Spider-Man. I just need more time to kind of figure myself out, and I can't be second place." And he's like, I understand, but I can't help being in love with you." And she says, I just need time. Can you promise me that?" And he says, "I'll wait for you as long as you need, until the stars turn cold and fall from the sky, whichever comes first." And I've always loved that scene. I've always thought it was terrific, and I really. The JMS run is my favorite Spider-Man run. That is my favorite writer on Spider-Man, because I thought that like not only did he write the Peter Mary Jane relationship terrifically, but I just thought that the characters were really sympathetic and everything read adult and mature while still being while still feeling like Spider-Man. So just that line, the stars turn cold and fall from the sky, I absolutely love. So this run of issues where he and Mary Jane are separated, but they kind of want to get back together, I really like. So that's my number 4.
I feel like I haven't read too much in this particular era. I've read because you said, what year was this specifically?
Oh, this would have been 2000, and I think it's 2003. Let me just double check that. 2000. Okay. Oh, this is 2002.
Okay, yeah. So you're in an unfortunate shadowy gap of my reading history, though this sounds really, really, really familiar, because once I started really getting back into comics during Civil War, I think I was spottily catching up on other things, so it just sounds like the astral form, when you mentioned that sounds familiar, and Mary Jane and him being separated. So yes, I don't know, but that sounds very tender and also hard, and that's why I like the marriage, because it wasn't portrayed, I think, as this unrealistic thing, but they actually had troubles. They had troubles not only as like a superhero couple, but as a real life couple that any couple would potentially have. But they kept coming back to each other, which is why, potentially Mary Jane is the one. But I'll have to check that out. I know JMS, his run is pretty well lauded by many.
I think it's polarized because like I remember like on Crawlspace, like nobody else liked JMS except for like me and Chris and Kevin. Everyone else was like Josh was like, well, Betty and Flash weren't in it, so it sucks, and like so whatever. But like and like Brad ragged on it, but like I genuinely love it, and that wasn't. I was reading Spider-Man by the time he was on the book, but like the Moreland stuff I loved, and I think that he's the best writer of the marriage period. Like it's not even a contest. It's like between him and David Michelini, but like, but seriously, like I mean, like, and there's a lot of humor too. He's telling Mary Jane why he missed her because of Spider-Man stuff, and then she's like, "Wait a minute, we're talking about you being Spider-Man in front of Aunt May, and Aunt May who knew who Peter was at the time."
Whew.
He was like, well, Peter told me. I thought he told you that he told me, and she's like, no. And they both look at him, and Peter's like, oh, is that Pierce Brosnan over there? Yeah. So like, it's a lot of really fun stuff, but it's also very like romantic and dramatic.
Mm-hmm. I will say that all of my choices are romantic, but if I was doing platonic, I would have chosen that one. And I don't know that I've read it all, but that image, that panel really sticks with me, where Peter is like beat up with all the bandages and Aunt May is there. Do you know what panel I'm talking about? Like, I think that's the moment that it's all revealed. Yeah. So you just reminded me about the whole Aunt May situation, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's a great Aunt May writer as well.
Whew.
I'm getting butterflies just reading it.
Oh, man. At least I'm not alone. Oh, I'm gonna... A bit of a cop-out for my number 3. Bit of a cop-out. I'll explain how.
Cop out away.
Okay. It is my show, as you always text me. Oh, boy. One of my favorite series ever. This is my number 3. Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. I love... Oh my gosh! Was that the Dilophosaurus? You have no right. You've not even scratched the surface of this beautiful book.
If there's one thing I hate in the world, it's... No, go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah. Whenever I was on Spider-Man Crawlspace, and someone would ask me about, something to read, hands down, just like I do now with Batgirl Year One, I would always recommend this. I feel like it's a winner. So it ran 2005 to 2007. That's the original run. Probably 2008 was season 2, which we don't speak about. But primarily what I'm going to be talking about was written by Sean McKeever with art by Takeshi Miyazawa. Love it. So we've got the Mary Jane miniseries, which is 4 issues. And then Mary Jane Homecoming, which is a sequel to that, which was also 4 issues. And then that went into Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, which was 20 issues. Mary Jane is primarily... She's the lead character. And what's great about her is, I think, true to life, Mary Jane very much portrays a party girl, but deep down there's, something else going on. And you sort of, throughout this series, suss out who the Mary Jane character actually is, and she tries to get through to her actual feelings and stops trying to pretend for everybody. I would say the longest relationship she has in this book is with Harry. But she's tutored by Peter. She has a crush on Spider-Man. At one point, she is about to go on a date with Spider-Man, and Peter shows up on her doorstep and says, "Don't go on a date with Spider-Man, go on a date with me." She does not. She, pretends that he's joking, one of those awkward things, to make it less awkward. And she's like, "Oh, you're such a kidder," and then goes off with Spider-Man. Little does she know. Yeah, I know. Little does she know that she actually really likes Peter. Unfortunately, once she realizes that she has these deep feelings for Peter, Gwen Stacy pops up in the story, and now they start dating. I know. So now there's this love triangle. Mary Jane goes back to Harry at one point, and so they just never have this time together. But whenever they see each other in the hall, it's clear how much they like each other. And at the very end of the 20-issue series, they're sitting on a bench. It's been a while since they've talked or interacted, and they're just talking as old friends and saying, how much they missed each other. And then Mary Jane is moving her hand towards Peter, but that's where it ends. And then, as far as I know, season 2 does not pick up there. But I did not reread that for my rereading because I remember that I was disheartened by it. So I only stuck with this one. But there are so many shipping moments throughout with many different people potentially. Flash and Liz are dating, but Flash also has feelings for Mary Jane, which causes some issues because Mary Jane and Liz. So it's very high school almost, but it's very sweet high school. And I just love the development of the Peter and Mary Jane relationship here, starting off as study buddies, which is really, Mary Jane asking Peter for homework and math help, and then developing into something more where she can trust him with things, and he can as well, even though he doesn't. There's at one point a really bad moment where Mary Jane thinks that he told Gwen his big secret, but he only said about the photography thing, and Mary Jane's really hurt by this. But it's a really fascinating look into Mary Jane, because I think she's potentially a character that we don't get to see as much and as deeply as we could. I think, at least in the past tales that I've been reading, because she very much does wear this party girl persona. So you get to go through that and see what she's really like and her struggles, and then just this really sweet high school relationship that's also really tense and frustrating for the reader, because you want them to get together, but there are all of these things that are coming in between them, which is potentially what happens. So it's all ages, but I think that it really does mean all ages, that adults can enjoy it too, and it's a really beautiful tale, and it holds a very special place in my heart. And I was super excited when Don did, throw this really weird thing that we were going to do this Shipper special. I already knew, like, oh, well, I've got to read Sensational Annual again, and I've got to read all of that again, but I was super excited to reread that because it had been a couple years.
I'm very curious. What about season 2 do you remember not liking?
It doesn't really pick up or push forward the story details, I think, or the threads that were left open with season 1. Like, I was expecting her and Peter to be together, and I think it went off on just another trail, and it almost seemed like it was a completely different story starting over. But it's been a while, and I don't want to miswrite it. But I just remember being really disappointed with it.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I will say that if you remember, when Spider-Man 3 was coming and then came out, there was Mary Jane was a very popular character in Marvel Comics. I would argue that at the time, she was Marvel's most popular female character, period, whether she was a hero or not. And she wasn't really a hero, but between the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane comic books, the Mary Jane novels, like the magazines where it had kind of Mary Jane fashion tips and stuff, and her appearing. I remember very explicitly Marvel kind of pushing her to be seen as the Marvel female character. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just remember that being an era, and this being, and honestly, I have always meant to read this book. I mean, you've demanded that I do.
I know! I do stuff for you. I watched Robotech for you, sir.
What, you would regret it?
But I wanted to show you my love, and I did that, and you won't do this for me.
And I watched all of Magical High School, so...
That's true.
Don't say I've never done anything for you.
That's true.
But, no, but honestly, I love Takeshi Miyazawa. I love his work on Ms. Marvel. And
oh, yes.
I like the idea of a, kind of romance Spider-Man comic from someone else's perspective. So honestly, my lack of reading has only come from just either forgetting about it or just kind of lack of inertia. But I'm joking. I've never been against the book. But I like when I heard that they're introducing Harry Osborn, and I know Firestar is in the book and stuff. I think that when it was coming out, I would glance at an issue too. I remember seeing Firestar there, and I remember doesn't Ned Leeds show up in the book?
Ned Leeds does show up, yes.
Right. So I definitely remember its time. So yeah, and I it was only a matter of time when this book was going to be picked. Yeah, no, it's a strong choice, and I think it's a strong recommendation. And I also think that it's a strong way to kind of with the premise being Mary Jane pretending to be this party girl, but having a deeper personality behind that, and having it be a romance book. That's a really cool idea for a comic. So I'm surprised. Was it canceled and then relaunched, or was it always meant to be only?
Yeah, no, I think it was relaunched. There was a gap of time.
Okay, that's unfortunate. But yeah, it was very much during kind of the mid to late 2000s when Mary Jane was pretty much what Gwen Stacy came to be post 2014, kind of the it girl of Marvel Comics at the time. So yeah, very strong choice. Not on my list, but that's my fault.
Yeah, it is your fault.
I said that so you could say those exact words and feel good about yourself. Honorable mention I want to throw out there.
Ooh.
Again, another one from the 90s Spider-Man series. It is basically kind of the tragedy episodes. When Turning Point, when Mary Jane falls into the time dilation portal, which is basically their version of the night Gwen Stacy died. The Return of Hydra Man Part 2, where it reveals that the Spider-Man that Mary Jane the Mary Jane that Spider-Man had married last season turned to be a water clone. Yeah. Which I know is risible, but it's actually one of the it's probably the most heartbreaking scene in the series. The episode where Black Cat leaves Spider-Man. They were kind of starting a romance to fight vampire crime with Blade.
That's right. Yes.
And he goes, Cat! And like he and Terry Lee are sitting on the sidewalk heartbroken because like Blade left her. Like there's some great romance. They handled romance the best. I would argue that until the 90s show, all Spider-Man cartoons are basically just action cartoons. You really didn't get, I mean, you would date characters, but you really wouldn't get the dual dynamic of his double identity. And it was handled perfectly, or near perfection in the 90s show. And again, in the Spec Spidey cartoon. So shout out to the 90s show, because I definitely wanted to include that there.
I almost included one of the Hydra Man ones. I was going back and forth because I always remember that time when she's been kidnapped and she uses what Peter has talked to her about to make the fireworks. Remember, she mixes the chemicals, and I'm like, "Aw." That always gets to me. I really like that.
Brother, you sound like my friend Peter Parker. Hey, don't insult me. Oh yeah, no, yeah, that was excellent. I mean, like, I always say that, like, when I read Batman comics, I hear Kevin Conroy, Lauren Lester, Tara Strong, Mark Hamill. When I read Spider-Man, it's always Christopher Daniel Barnes. Without fail. Mary Jane, I think that I like my favorite voice actress for her is Vanessa Marshall from the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon.
Oh, yes.
I think that she has a better, more sultry voice that's natural to the character than I think Sarah Ballantyne's kind of more lighthearted voice was. Yeah, the 90s show. It needs to be reminded. People who don't know better, because that 90s show, I hear it sucks. High five, guys. No, it's not the best cartoon. I think Spectacular Spider-Man's better, but it's my favorite.
Sure. Yeah, I have so many action figures from that show.
Oh man, we had the Daily Bugle. My brother and I, we had
the play set.
Yes. Did you have it too?
No, I did not have the play set. Didn't it have a bugle van?
I don't remember a van, but I just remember kind of like a fold out bugle building.
Yeah, there's a rope hanging down from somewhere.
Yeah, like a pole for Spider-Man to kind of swing up back and forth. And we had the Scorpion Spider Slayer.
Yes.
It's pretty lit. Anyway, enough stalling. My number 3. And I don't think you'll be surprised, because we talked about this. Spider-Man Blue.
Oh, what's that?
What?
Yo!
I thought you said you read it.
Oh, man.
You lied to me again.
Oh, man.
Why you always gotta lie to Donnie? So, Spider-Man Blue is a 6-issue miniseries by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. This is part of the Marvel Color books that he was doing, because he did Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray, Daredevil Yellow, Captain America White, and I think that's all. I don't think he did an Iron Man one. I remember, the Captain America one was about him and Bucky. The Daredevil one was about him and Karen Page. I've not read Hulk Gray, so I don't know what that's about. This is Spider-Man remembering falling in love with Gwen Stacy, and it's told in a modern perspective, but it's retelling actual issues of Amazing Spider-Man that did occur. So when he's thinking about Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy and fighting the Rhino, ostensibly those events did happen in the original comics, and I can confirm that because I've read that. I will say right up front that I've always loved this series, but it has a host of problems. The continuity is janked. The continuity is all over the place, because yes, he does fight the Rhino and the Lizard and Kraven the Hunter and who else? The Vulture. But the order of the events are kind of crazy. Like Loeb kind of rewrites some things. Adrian Toomes is in there when he wasn't at the time. And some things happen, some things that are different. Like Flash decides to go to the army as opposed to being drafted, which you understand because of the time period. But if people were reading this story and thinking that they were be given an understanding of the original comics, it is different. And I also think that I think some of the voices are a bit different. I don't know. I don't really like how he writes Peter in terms of his internal voice. It doesn't really sound like Peter Parker. He calls Billy Connors the boy and stuff. It's I don't know if Peter would talk like that, but I can acknowledge all of those problems and still really enjoy this book because it is so romantic. It has a great jazzy old school feel. It's evoking that type of kind of 60s jazz aesthetic to it by like, like all the issue titles are after like jazz songs, like My Funny Valentine, Autumn in New York, If I Had You, Anything Goes, Let's Fall in Love, All of Me. I think half of those are from Miles Davis, and I listen to Miles Davis when I read this comic. I'm not going to lie to you. It's about him falling in love with Gwen Stacy, which again is a little bit kind of like dubious continuity wise, because it kind of makes Gwen Stacy out to be this sort of unattainable goddess that she wasn't really ever. But it doesn't matter because it's still really well done. Like what I like about this is that like it's romantic, but there's no like there's not a lot of kissing or dating or stuff. It's just kind of sideways glances and silent panels and people not talking and kind of people making faces and kind of oh, I wished I was out there laughing with you guys. I wonder what you thought of me if I had made the party and not, been knocked out by Blackie Drago. And you see Peter's really nervous to talk to Gwen Stacy, and you see him really not sure what to do, especially when Mary Jane shows up. And my favorite scene in this book is that he's sick with the flu, so he's in his apartment that he's renting with Harry. And Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy both show up to Mary Jane feeds him soup and Gwen Stacy wants to read him Huck Finn for some reason. And there's a bit of a Betty Veronica kind of dynamic, which I think people tend to exaggerate when they talk about the old stuff. But it is funny. And you do see both of them are attracted to him and he's not sure what to do. And then the vulture flies out the window and he has to kind of shoot them away and he's like, vulture. But I love Spider-Man Blue. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever. Kind of messed up as it is. I really, really dig it. And I think that this is probably one of the most romantic Spider-Man stories ever done because, yeah, he fights villains and stuff, and there's no overarching subplot, but really it's about him and Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane and kind of that kind of romance. It's a romance book, and I think it kills. So if you've not read it, Stella, then read it.
How dare you? I actually did read this. I just wanted to. I always like when you shout "what" at me. This was actually one of my honorable mentions. It almost made the list. It was on there for a hot second before I decided to take it off. But I really loved it. I think perhaps my continuity. The only time that I'm a super continuity nerd is with Batgirl. Because that's the only one I feel like I really have a foot to stand on. So I'm afraid I didn't really notice, the continuity things. I mean, obviously with all the villains, it seems like it's a really quick time frame. I did notice that. But I just really enjoyed the storytelling and really, really liked it. I like how Gwen and Mary Jane, I guess I wouldn't call it Betty and Veronica, but just almost rivals and being catty to one another. Mm-hmm. I thought that there were some really good lines that go back and forth between the two of them. But really, my goodness, the butterflies were really flying around that last scene where she comes up to his room and he's just changing because he had just come back. And then she picks up her own Valentine and asks, "What's this?" And he's saying, "Oh, I don't know," because he didn't know it's from her. And then she asks him to be her Valentine, and then they end up having a very passionate and 50s/60s era kiss. It was lovely. And very much a slow burn, but I think it has such a great ending to it that it just all builds. And I think it's very similar to what happened in the actual Silver Age with the comics, because it very much was Gwen kind of making eyes at Peter, but Peter being very up in the clouds and not really noticing what was happening, and then crossing wires, and then all of a sudden they do finally get together. So I thought that it was very true to the subject material.
Yeah, no, I think that this was again, this is, and I feel like this was also, when did this come out? This came out in 2005, I think. It was also around the kind of the Mary Jane era of Marvel Comics, but
2002, 2003.
Really? It was that early? Huh.
That was my, that's what my notes
Okie dokie. But no, yeah, it's a little suspect that the framing device is Peter sort of talking to the ghost of Gwen after she died.
Sure.
When he is married to Mary Jane.
Yeah, and I wonder about that, because she even comes up and she's completely fine with it, and she even says, say hi to Gwen for me. But don't you think that's hard to fight the ghost of girlfriend's past when you're married with someone? At some point, I feel like that'd be hard on a relationship.
Well, I know that there's a story where he I think it's like later on, like when the clone of Gwen Stacy comes back, where he says to Mary Jane, like, you're not a second choice. I love you more than I love Gwen. But I understand how he feels. Like it's one of those things like where he's never going to kind of really get over what happened to Gwen. He can't help himself. But like, this does take place on Valentine's Day, so shouldn't they like be out together as opposed to kind of him creepily sitting in the attic?
Yeah.
It's just amusing.
Yep. Did you talk much about the art?
Not enough. I think the art is awesome. I really,
Absolutely.
and it's weird because Tim Sale has such a very distinctive kind of like, I'm not sure how to describe his style. It's sometimes cartoony. It's really like well realized and kind of be realistic, but also kind of like exaggerated. And again, it evokes a kind of like 60s feel without feeling like it's period. I don't know if Peter, dresses in that business suit that he did in the original issues ever, but like everyone looks like they're. It's like they actually exist in the 60s, like realistically, as opposed to like fiction Hollywood 60s. Like them in the waiting for the homecoming, like the housewarming party, like where it's snowing outside. Like it looks like it's the 60s, but it looks like it would be the 60s from like reality and not like from Marvel Comics back then. So what do you think about the artwork?
Oh, absolutely. I really love Tim Sale. I think I've loved everything that he's done. Probably the first thing that I've really read of his was Batman the Long Halloween. And so yeah, I don't think I could describe his art, but you can always tell that it's Tim Sale. But what I like is that he very much, I think, pays homage to Steve Ditko in certain details, especially Gwen's eyebrows. Because, our mutual friend, I always say that he has Ditko eyes. So, yeah, that's certainly something. But, yeah, he makes very beautiful women. I think Mary Jane and Gwen are both just gorgeous in this.
Absolutely. I love this in issue 3. After you met Mary Jane and like she's like meeting Flash and Harry everybody, and it was like who is that? And like she's kind of just giving these sideways glances, and Gwen's kind of generally being silent. And like there's a shot where they leave, and you see kind of Gwen on the very bottom right corner, kind of like bye Peter. Like it's really like the artwork. The storytelling is terrific. Like the way that like the art goes along with the dialogue, which sounds really basic, but like yeah, like it's very very well organized. And I don't know how close these writers. I mean, I know that they work together all the time, but I'm not sure how much close and correspondence they work towards each other. But like it's like telepathic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Well, my number 2 is in fact a visual form. Now, I guess that's unfair because that's all the things we've done. It's a moving picture. And it is actually Amazing Spider-Man, number 1.
Okay.
Starring, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, which of course came out in 2012.
Well, that was something.
I'm sorry. I thought he was going to arrest me at one point.
No, I wouldn't have let him arrest you. What happened to your face?
I want to tell you something.
Oh. Okay.
I've been bitten.
So have I.
Okay. I gotta tell you this one thing. And it's about the vigilante and the car thief, alright?
Oh, okay.
No. Don't. Okay, no, forget that. I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna talk about me, okay?
What about you?
It's impossible. I wish I could just. I can't. It's hard to say.
Just say.
No, I don't.
Say it. What? What?
Your father wants you to come inside right away. Okay. Okay? Yeah. Gwen.
And like I said, and I was on the Spider-Man crawl space, I think, when the news was coming out about Andrew Garfield. I don't think I was very positive or hip to him when I was on the crawl space. I remember we had random segments about... I vividly remember, tell me if I'm wrong, but you probably remember this too. I guess there's that scene where... No, never mind. But I remember that they talked about, like, Spider-Man's crotch. Didn't they, on Spider-Man Crawl Space? Didn't we have a segment about it on the suit and all of that stuff, and we were wondering what he was doing? Or maybe it was one of those out-of-context pictures that Brad sometimes pops up on the website. Do you remember this? Why are you laughing?
Why am I laughing? Because, like...
Is it true, or am I making this up?
You're not making this up. Well, because,
okay.
like, if you remember in the movie, actually, we watched this, like, he, like... kind of gets the guy in kind of a neck hold with his legs, and he yells, "Crotch!"
In the car, right?
Yeah, but like one of the set photos was him, like, literally scissoring the guy with his legs in the on the neck, and like I know that like they couldn't get enough of that because and like in the costume,
yes.
his buttocks were like padded for extra grip action. I'm not sure why.
Sure, but anyways, yeah. So. All that to say that I wasn't too hip to him. It might have been the influences of other people, who knows. But here, once I actually saw it, I really enjoyed Andrew's portrayal of him. I think it was different from the Tobey Maguire, which, I think it should be, but I think it also had that shy and awkward teenager guy. He was perhaps a little more angsty than Peter, but that's okay. And so the development of his relationship with Gwen, I just really enjoyed. It is a little weird though when you think about it, because they've probably been in class all year, but it's just taken this one moment for them to actually, start talking to each other. But that rooftop kiss, I think, is one of my favorite moments in the Amazing Spider-Man series. Just how awkward it is. He's trying to get his feelings out. It's exactly like the Sensational Spider-Man annual that I was talking about. He says something like, "I've been bitten." And then he's, like basically smacking his head, and she's like, "I am too." And clearly they're talking about two different things, and it's just not working out, and then he ends up webbing her, and, and then they have a lovely kiss. And later on, it's got that serious development also where she's tending his wounds, which, I mean, how much more intimate can you get than that? Like I said, that Aunt May and Peter Parker seeing him like that, or I'm sure Mary Jane's tended his wounds as well. That's just, whoo, because you're so vulnerable, and that person is serving you and healing you. So it was a big scene, but also her showing her fears of that relationship, because she likens it to her father, that she doesn't know if her father's going to come back in her life. So it's very similar to Peter, him going off. And the end is so, of course there's a funeral and rain and black umbrellas, and then they can't be together, but then there's that little bit of hope at the very end with the teacher saying, sometimes I keep my promises, or whatever that line was. So there's hope for that. But the reason why I picked this one over 2 is because, number 1, 2 broke my heart, and I was depressed for a couple days. And also because it was hard to watch, because it was frustrating, because there's this self-imposed, like, impediment put in between them by Peter, and so just the whole movie, that they want to be together, but Peter is not letting them be together, and it's very frustrating. So, but number 1, the first one, I think is lovely.
Yeah, I don't
I know, spit it out already.
I don't exactly get the hate-dom for these two movies. I think I do, because like I understand that like the Raimi trilogy was really good, and this did kind of I understand how seeing this kind of felt like a cash grab, kind of starting everything over, not doing everything exactly the same, or doing things too similarly. I do understand the flaws of these two movies, but I think it's because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were so good in it. I really can't care that much, and I love Spider-Man, so I think I can't be quite critical of him or movies with him, but like Yeah, the relationship between the two was terrific. I also love that scene where she's kind of cleaning him up, and he's saying, "Yeah, I have to do this. It's my responsibility." I like that. I like them kissing on the roof. I always liked when like Gwen Stacy, get back in here. She's like, I'm coming.
I know. Yeah, her mom comes up.
I mean, like, I remember us talking about like the whole last scene where he's like, "Oh, the best promises were made to be broken," which kind of has him sound sleazy. Promising her father, as his dying words, leave Gwen out of it. Yes, sir, I shall. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to break that promise," when she knows that he made that promise. But whatever. No, yeah, I think it's a good choice. And I mean, there's something I don't love about the movies, but nothing I really hate aside from like I don't like how they did the origin story, because you really cannot mess with him getting the burglar, and like they never came back to that. That's kind of heresy. That's actually worse than the Sandman thing for Spider-Man 3. Aside from that, I really enjoyed it, and I think that like my favorite scene with the two of them, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it might be that rooftop scene. I also like that scene in like the when they're kind of hiding together in the second one. I think she's like working at
Oh yes. That is one of the closet scene.
Yeah.
Yep. And then he just kisses her. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's great stuff. So yeah, I think this is I've already made it as an honorable mention, but like yeah, this is absolutely worthy up there.
Yeah. I want to ask you another heresy.
Go on.
Do you think it's a heresy that Uncle Ben was not named at all? Or, well, I guess he's named, but doesn't really figure into Spider-Man Homecoming?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, it is. And like when we talked about this in the Spider-Man, or on the comic film review, I think that as much fun as they were having on that movie, Spider-Man is a character who stems from pathos and kind of like a point of trauma, and you really can't, as much laughs as you like to have, you really can't forget that. And I think that when it came to like this is so off topic, but who cares? When it came to kind of the big lifting the crap off his back scene, it was going all well and good, but like having Tony Stark be in his head to remind the audience of why he's doing that, really, that's not Spider-Man. Because in the original comic scene that they ripped that from, he was thinking of Uncle Ben, and because he's not been mentioned up to this point, that was the ultimate time to do that, and that really kind of like took the character for granted in a way which I didn't appreciate. I mean, and the Amazing movies aren't like, they did have the Uncle Ben thing, but like they seem to be overtly concerned with like the parents, which I really did not like. Like, did you ever see that deleted ending, the alternate ending where he meets his dad?
No.
Oh yeah, because I have the DVD, and like he meets his dad, and his dad tells him with great power comes great responsibility, and I was like screw you.
It's his dad, not his Uncle Ben.
Yeah, his dad.
That's a bunch of poo.
Yeah, that sucked. Like when Peter's crying at the gravestone of Gwen Stacy, his dad shows up. It was well acted, but like I that was my biggest problem of the second one. I did not like the devotion to characters that no one cares about, Richard and Mary Parker. But it was not enough to make me hate the film. But yeah, no, the Gwen and Peter thing. I mean, I feel that like we plan to talk about like Mary Jane versus Gwen at the end of this. So I guess I'll save that conversation there. But like I think that this is like for the Gwen shippers, this is their biggest. This is the best ammunition they actually have, as opposed to like the source material. But that's another great choice.
Thank you.
Okay, so did I traumatize you with my comments?
No, I wondered if we differed on that because I thought it was heretical. That was one of my biggest. That's really my biggest problem with that film is the invisible. Well, it's not non-existence of Uncle Ben.
I remember I saw it with my brother, and it surprised me that he said, when I was watching the film, I could tell you, Donovan, I could tell that there were things you really were not enjoying, and I didn't know that I was like visible with my reaction.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I actually went out to see it twice just to make sure I knew what I thought about it. I do like it, but at this point, it is the only Spider-Man film I don't own on DVD yet.
Okay.
I mean, I own Civil War, but Civil War was awesome. So like, but like, I agree essentially with everything you said. My number 2 choice, again from the JMS arc or the JMS run of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2. This collects issue 46 through 50. This is in the trade dress. It's titled "The Life and Death of Spiders," Volume 4, but it goes over specifically Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 49 and 50, where Mary Jane and Peter are still separated, and they're trying to get back to each other, but they keep missing each other, and they're on the verge of breaking up forever. Peter's like, she has a life, she has a career, she has her own friends, she's enjoying her life, and you were trying to drag her down. It's time to let go, Peter. And she tries to see him at New York. Of course, he's trying to see her at California, so she's in New York, and he's gone, and she's waiting for him to come back. And she's like, oh, just a little longer, just a little longer, just a little longer. This was a mistake. I never should have come. And so they're both on their way back to their respective homes. They're like, it's over. Move on. Let it go. Goodbye. And then like their flights are both delayed. Or I think Peter's flight is delayed, and I think Mary Jane had a layover. So they end up meeting in the airport, and they're going to finally talk it out. But then Dr. Doom shows up.
Oh, no, not him.
Everyone's favorite villain from the Spider-Man's Amazing Friends. Captain America was also there. So, like, while that's happening, every now and then, when Peter and Captain America are fighting Dr. Doom, there's always a break where Spider-Man goes over to Mary Jane, and they try to talk about their relationship. And, like, it's funny in some parts. Like, she says, you never introduced me to your friends. He's like, oh, come on. It's really, really, really... I mean, this is, I think, the reason why so many people were pissed off at One More Day, because their relationship is genuine. It's not just someone's choice of a love partner. And she's like, he's like, it's not that I love you, Mary Jane. I need you. And she's like, you don't need me. You have all these powers. You're doing all these things. And he's like, no, you don't get it. Like, every happy thought I have begins and ends with you, and every sad thought begins with the fact that you're not here. I can only do these things because you're in my life. Nothing goes right when you're not here. I can do anything with you. And then she starts crying. It's like, oh, that's why I pulled away, because I didn't feel that you needed me, and that's why they kind of come back together, and they're back together from then on until 2007, and it's easily one of the most romantic and sweet moments in the character's history. And I think I think it's slept on too much because, I don't know why, really. People weren't reading the run at the time, but it's lovely, and this is absolutely my number 2.
I feel so sad because I can't comment on these because I've not read them.
Read the gym. Stop crying.
I guess, how many
volumes?
Trades is that, collected, and if I just skip, I could potentially just pull up my little digital files and pull them out, but if I wanted to maybe get that on Comixology, how many volumes did he put out?
I think because it goes into after he joins the Avengers, then you have the other storyline, and then it's Civil War, and then it's Back in Black, then it's One More Day. So I think it's like 12 or 13 volumes, but the best stuff is with him and John Romita Jr., which is like the first. Okay. It is the first 7 volumes. Volume 6 covers Spider-Man 500, and it's excellent. Again, it's my absolute all-time favorite run of Spider-Man, and it is pretty non-traditional. Like, the only classic villains he fights is Dr. Octopus. It's kind of like one and done villains. The supporting cast really is kind of related to Peter, Mary Jane, and Aunt May, but it feels more intimate, and it feels like you don't need the trappings of classic Spider-Man to tell good Spider-Man stories, and I really enjoy it for that. So but like ASM Volume 2, 49 through 50, I think when you first read it, you might tear up a bit because it is so dramatic.
Well, it's as I said when you mentioned the other one, the fact that he really draws on realistic relationships, and it's not, it's something that you see in a comic book, but you can see elsewhere. And here's another really emotionally poignant one that you have picked. So yeah, you're just really advertising for JMS. So checks in the mail for you, and you're really pushing me to read that. I guess skip, couple hundred and get to that. What issue is this?
It's ASM Volume 2.
Oh no.
Okay.
So they renumbered it.
Well, they do, but eventually they go back to the original numbering. So you could actually, if you went on spiderfan.org, they would give you like what they would for the original numberings.
Okay.
So but yeah, it's a Volume 2.
You said 5960?
4950.
4950, yeah. So what do you think that would be in the actual numbering?
Probably 449 and 50.
Okay. Oh, I'm only, 200 off.
Yeah, $4.49 and 50, I think, is what. And honestly, these JMS trades are very easy to find because they're so recent. Like whenever I go anywhere where it has comics that have Spider-Man collection, before if it in addition to all the brand new day crap, like it has the JMS stuff more than anything else.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity. And side note, this does make me consider. Just either for a potential shipper spotlight or whatever, like, do the Bat books have this much drama in them? In terms of, like romance? I'm trying to think. Like, honestly, like besides, I'm sure I've read them, but as consistently.
I think, romance it seems to be lower on the scale with Batman stuff.
The best I can remember off the top of my head, and you'll be coming to it soon, is that issue of Nightwing with him and Oracle during No Man's Land when Dixon.
Sure, yeah.
And that's a pretty romantic heavy issue, and that was in a time where they could tell those stories. But generally, it's we gotta stop so and so everyone team up in this crossover that no one's going to remember, kind of thing.
I guess we're entering this time now, though, since Batman and Catwoman are engaged.
We'll see how long that lasts. Ha ha ha.
And don't you dare say that. They sleep in the same bed.
Ew.
I liked it. It was only one panel, but I'm like, see, this relationship can work. There she is. He just gets up out of bed and goes down his little bat cave and does his little thing.
No, it's fine. I hope it turns out just like it did in Earth 2 when they have little baby Helena.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Well, that's what the annual did, anyways. Some Helena appeared to them in the guise of Huntress.
Oh, yeah.
Your favorite character.
Yeah, my favorite character who should never be trusted.
Oh, let's not drudge up these things right now.
Old wounds in the world of romance.
Maybe we'll do a Huntress shipper special.
And read Nightwing Huntress 1 through 4.
Yes!
Where like Dick walks from her bedroom and Oracle's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yes, that's basically correct. Okay, we're coming down to it. This is it for me, people. This is my number one. Now, I was not allowed to watch MTV.
No!
But in 2003, that all changed.
Yo!
I'm just kidding.
You give me a heart attack. With
man. This. I wanted a flashback to the Maximiria.
Oh my god! I thought you were choose like my number one, like Peter Parker in Indy from the MTV show.
Oh man. Okay, but for reals, this was always going to be my number one. When Don said we're doing this shipper spotlight, I knew what my number one was off the top. All the other things may have shifted and such. This was always going to be my number one. So my number one is Spider-Man 2 from 2004, starring, of course, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst.
Had to do what I had to do.
Mary Jane.
Peter. I can't survive without you.
You shouldn't be here.
I know you think we can't be together. But can't you respect me enough to let me make my own decision? I know there'll be risks, but I want to face them with you. It's wrong that we should only be half alive, half of ourselves. I love you. So here I am, standing in your doorway. I've always been standing in your doorway. Isn't it about time somebody saved your life? We'll say something.
Thank you, Mary Jane Watson.
get him, Tiger.
My favorite scene is the last scene, actually, where Mary Jane is running out of her wedding.
Abandoning her fiancé.
Yeah, to John Jameson, and running across town and going to Peter and basically saying, you know, she deserves the choice to make, and it's wrong to be half alive, and that they deserve to be together. And then they share a kiss, and then, of course, there are sirens, and she tells him to go off. And so he has already revealed that he was Spider-Man. So, you know, a close second scene, of course, is when there's the whole fight with Doc Ock, and the debris is falling upon her, and he catches it, and then it's all revealed. And, of course, you know, in the back of her mind, she always knew. And in case they die, he says, you know, I do, in fact, love you. But this whole film is, you know, it's frustrating on some levels, but it's also, I think, realistic and gets to the heart of the Peter Parker Spider-Man character, where he's choosing duty, you know, potentially over love, and he just doesn't want to put her in any danger, and at the same time he's fighting with the loss of his powers there. But oh man, I just really love this film, number one, and there are just some really special moments. There are hard moments where he's letting her down, and then when he has no powers and he can sort of be Peter Parker 24/7, he's finally starting to come back into her life, and then I think there's a change in attitude in her, and thinking, oh, maybe I could be with Peter, but then he decides that they can't be together at the little coffee shop, and that's, I think, sort of the little catalyst of towards the end wherever all this stuff happens. But I think this is just a really beautiful moment between Mary Jane and Peter. I think it has so much hope that would lead us into Spider-Man 3, but unfortunately some things happen in Spider-Man 3 that maybe should not have happened. What also, oh man, you know, this came at a time when I used to go to I used to see films multiple times if I really liked them. Like, I saw Spider-Man a lot, I saw this one a lot, and I remember watching this and always getting butterflies at the end, and always also puzzled and really looking and examining Mary Jane's face at the end, because you see Spider-Man and you hear the Danny Elfman track, of course, and then it goes back to her hanging out sort of the window and just looking at her face. You kind of wonder what that face is. It could be contentment. I think it could also be like slight concern, because, you know, now she knows what she's getting herself into. So I think Sam Raimi certainly doesn't pull any punches either, but I think it's just a very beautiful moment that she runs out, she goes to him, and she's like, let's be together. So this would always be my number one.
No, I've actually not seen this movie. No, I'm kidding.
Donovan!
I'll be betraying myself. I was going to say that, like, yeah, like considering how romantic how much they build it up in the second one, I was wondering, like, what was your reaction in the third one when they really kind of break it down until like the very end?
Well, it's just sad because it starts off really nice. You know, they're in the web, and then you've got that possibly comedic moment where they're going to maybe be engaged, but he's very selfish and only talking about himself. And so they've got the realistic problems that potentially JMS was also addressing, because she's got her issues, but he always relates it to Spider-Man. But it's the whole Gwen Stacy that really threw me off and that I didn't really like. I think just this is one of those tropes. You asked me about romantic tropes that annoy me, and I told you one of them is throwing in a third wheel to make a love triangle at the last minute, and this is exactly what, in my opinion, Gwen Stacy was, and just causing issues, and then Mary Jane being with Harry for a time, and it went off the rails a little bit. I don't hate on Spider-Man 3 as much as some people do, but like the romantic aspect really does in fact get me. But there is, that hope at the end when he goes to see her when she's singing. But you almost wanted that series to end with them getting married.
Yeah. I like how they kind of like end up where they do kind of like at least try to reconcile, but it's sort of left open ended. But like it is, yeah. If you're a shipper for those two, it's really traumatic. And what happens in the third one, like when he takes out, he's like, do you see this ring? Do you know what it is? But like, for Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man film still. I think Spider-Man 1 is actually kind of underrated, but Spider-Man 2 is awesome. I will never forget. And you're gonna have to bleep this out. Watching the film in the theater with my brother and my mom, the scene where he sees Mary Jane at the party, and like he had missed her play, and like he had tried to, and he tries to tell her poetry, and she's like, "Don't start, you're never there for me," and he's all dejected, and then he goes over to Harry, or Harry just grabs him and like just drunkenly smacks him in the face, and they announce that Mary Jane is engaged to John Jameson. And everyone in the theater was like, "Oh man!" And like Jameson's Parker, take the picture. There's a guy in the theater who was like, "Man, shut the up!" And like,
oh my gosh!
I laughed for the next 10 minutes so hard, I had to run out and like laugh in the parking lot. It was so funny.
Oh my gosh! So he was talking to J. Jonah Jameson?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, so good.
What did your mom and brother do?
Laugh with me? Well, I guess they stayed in. Like it was like between that and the end of Revenge of the Sith was like my favorite laughing moments in the theater. But like, no, yes, I really like that, and especially like the scene at the coffee bean where she's like, "Do you love me or not?" I don't. Well, then kiss me. What? Just one little kiss, and then like his spider sense goes off like this. I remember that was in the trailer. Because people like, what did you think about Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane? Because she was kind of a polarizing choice, and people don't tend to really enjoy her portrayal of that character. What was your thoughts on it?
Let's be honest. When I heard that Shailene Woodley was supposed to be Mary Jane in the Amazing Spider-Man series, I was like, oh no. That would have been worse for me. I have no problem with Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane. I don't know what people's problems are, but I enjoyed her. Again, this is like the first time I'm seeing, live-action Spider-Man on the big screen. I'm going to love every aspect of it. So I'm fine with her. That's me, though.
I mean, I never minded her when I was watching it. I do think that, like, as the movie series went on, she was kind of, like, dialed down. I think in the first one, she's pretty much, like, recognizable Mary Jane. Mm-hmm. In the sequels, it was kind of more and more of a new character, which is fine. I mean, she didn't necessarily annoy me too much. I know she annoyed a lot of people, but, like, I never personally despised her. Although I think that they could have probably gotten a better actress to play her. Not that Kirsten is a bad actress, but, like, I think she could have been written more. I don't know. She wasn't perfect, but I didn't hate her.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps it's one of those things where I wasn't as steeped in the Spider-Man mythos as I am now, so I just accepted whatever I saw on screen, but I guess I could see, even given what I've read in Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane or current stuff, that maybe it's not, like, page to screen, so maybe that's why people were having problems. But I think if you're able, I just sort of separated the two, I think, and so she's just the Mary Jane in that particular instance.
I will say,
because I mean, Emma Stone is not the Gwen Stacy that's on paper.
No, not even kind of.
Yeah, so.
No, yeah, no. I mean, I maintain, and I mean this, that like, if Zendaya was written to be more of a comic book Mary Jane, then she would be the best Mary Jane, because I feel that like because of Zendaya's like sort of media persona with kind of her being a model and stuff. Honestly, like no. She looks the most like Mary Jane compared to Kirsten Dunst and Shailene Woodley, who kind of evoke that girl next door thing, rather than a sort of a vivacious model personality. And and like when all that kind of thing was kind of going on, like I felt like, but she looks like Mary Jane, kind of. I mean, because she's one of those characters that's never been perfectly portrayed in the movies, like Doctor Doom. So it's kind of a constant frustration with Spider-Man fans.
Alas.
Indeed, alas.
The upside down kiss, though, I think is one of those kisses that will always be remembered in history, in film history.
Oh yeah, I remember.
OC.
The OC did that. I wasn't aware.
Are you serious? Yeah. Seth's character fell off the roof and he hit randomly a Spider-Man mask on, and then Rachel Bilson's character came and then kissed him upside down.
I remember a previous girlfriend of mine. She said, "Oh, I'm watching Spider-Man right now," and I was like, "Well, what's your favorite part?" And she said in all caps, "The kissing in the rain scene." And I was like, "Really?" And then I erased the text because of course everyone wants that scene.
Oh dear, you erased.
Well, I was
going
to text her like, what about the fight scene? I was like quiet, man. Like you don't know anything, but yeah, that always seems to get them.
Dear. You were woman-splained.
I suppose I was. She also was afraid of Heath Ledger's Joker, so.
She was afraid.
Yeah,
of
every time he was on screen, when we were together and we watched it, it was my second time watching it, but every time he was on screen, she kind of turned away because he freaked her out.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I guess that's good. That was a good portrayal then.
We're not together anymore, so that's why now. But
oh dear.
No, but yeah, no,
we're getting a clue into what it's like to date the Donovan Morgan Grant. And I mean, besides the baggage that's in your tummy right now, clearly you've gotta have you should, before you start dating someone, you should have them give you a little a resume of comics that they know, pop culture, so then you can figure out who's the best for you.
have them.
If Robotech's not on there, that person you are swiping left.
Have them go through this sort of metric of, you better know this, otherwise I will think that you're an ugly person or something. Yes. Well, I tried that before and I didn't get any dates, so I kind of have to lower my standards. My favorite,
You have no even idea. This entire time you've been, winging it. Here, you don't even know what your number one was.
Well, I'm distracted by you probing into my personal life.
Probing? Oh, give me a break.
Yes, ma'am. But you just relentlessly. Actually, honestly, I was always going to say that my honorable mention was going to be the Raimi films, because it was they really did kind of get that romance. I mean, you can't. Don't listen to younger Donovan. You really can't play off that kissing scene from the alley. It's an upside down kiss is pretty unique. I think that the way that the romantic trauma is played in Spider-Man 2 is terrific. So yeah, that's going to be another honorable mention. But my number one, it's a bit of a surprise, is actually Amazing Spider-Man number 189, where he sleeps with Betty Brant. That is my. No, I'm kidding. That's just a joke.
Yo. For our friend in common.
Yeah.
Does he actually sleep with Betty Brant at one point?
Yeah, he does.
Okay. 189 seems pretty low for it, though.
Yeah, she escaped her husband on her honeymoon.
Oh, I remember this. That sounds sick. Oh, that's right. Okay. Yep. Why would that be on your list? That's terrible. This is what it would be like if I did this show with Joshua Lappin Bertoni. He would pick really awful choices, and I would decide to never do this again because of how awful his choices were.
I just did that to tease you off. That's not my number one. My number one is ASM 122 at the very last page.
Ooh.
Are you lighting one up over there? Is that what I hear?
I only do Virginia Slims at certain times of the night, and now it is time.
Smelly. So this is part 2, or this I guess is what was it, Death of the Goblin, or Goblin's Last Stand. It's part 2 of the Death of Gwen Stacy story, and it's the epilogue. It's a single page where Yeah, it says I'm swilling wine right now.
I'm pretty sure I know what this is.
So Peter Parker walks back to his apartment. The Green Goblin is dead, but so is Gwen Stacy. And he thinks he's alone, but somehow Mary Jane is inside. I guess she had a key that Harry had given her. Peter comes in, and Mary Jane says, "Hey, Petey, I heard about Gwen. I'm really torn up, Pete." And Peter snaps, like, "You're torn up? Don't make me laugh, Mary Jane. You wouldn't be sorry if your own mother died. What do you care about strays like me and Gwen? Go on, get out of here. I know how you hate sick bags." And at this point, she's starting to tear up. And Peter's just kind of like burying his face in his hand. He's like, "And believe me, I wouldn't want to spoil your fun." And the caption reads, "For a moment, she hesitates by the door." And then like she's standing at the door, the open doorway. And then she looks back at him, and then she closes the door. And that's the end of the issue. And Josh kind of contests this because, granted, it's not overtly romantic, but it is the first major step in characterization for the two of them. And it's an excellent scene. And even though it's not overtly romantic or eroticized or anything, I've always absolutely loved it as a piece of storytelling. And I think that, like, as somebody who enjoys Peter Parker and Mary Jane together, it's my favorite scene between the two of them. That's really all I have to say about it. Like, it is that good. It's my number one.
Now, I will admit that I'm not good with issue numbers, but I had a feeling of what this was going to be, and I was correct, so pat on my back.
Woohoo!
But I agree that this is a really well done scene, and I applaud you for choosing it as number one. It absolutely it's everything you say. I mean, Peter Parker is being absolutely nasty, and you know, I guess he potentially has that right because of what he's going through. He's not doing it, I think, vindictively, but he's certainly doing it out of the pain that he's feeling. And Mary Jane, I mean, no one deserves to take that, potentially. So she could have just walked right out of there, and that's maybe what it's a little bit of a test. But the fact that she stays and she is with him, I think it really does speak volumes. And I think it also pushes through this superficial lifestyle and persona that she's been wearing, you know, the party girl lifestyle, to show that she is a complex human being that has deep emotional feelings, and she stays with him. And I think it is, you know, if we were to do a shipper spotlight, just, you know, the short one, this would certainly be the first hint of romance potentially. But yeah, it's a very beautiful scene.
Yeah, and kind of like you, I always knew that this was, if not number one, always going to be on the list.
Oh wow, you actually may have planned this out?
Maybe. I mean, I'm just a fool. I don't know. Maybe I didn't, but I mean, I had this I first read this. I still have the original trade, or I should say the original, but like the copy of the trade that I have is how I first read the story. I didn't read it like after reading all these other issues. So like in the original issue, there's like, you know, next Luke Cage kind of blurb, but like that's not in my copy. So I just like how it just says click of the door and the story ends.
Sure.
I mean, this is just because I remember when you were reading this, we were on our way to Comic-Con. And you were staying with me, so we were on the same plane, and you were like, you know, like kind of let down by the story because you thought Peter should have been more upset, which I don't agree with that. I think that he was plenty mad, but this is one of those scenes that kind of demonstrates, in my opinion, just like how just totally what's the worst his bereavement for the next several issues kind of takes over the books, and in ways which I really love, because Jerry Conway, who wrote the comic, is a master. And I think that this is one of those scenes where he kind of just writes realistic human behavior. Because, yeah, Peter is being horrible to her. It shows a maturity of Mary Jane that we've not overtly seen before. Maybe hinted at before, but like not overtly seen. And this one really, especially if you take into account the idea that she already knows he's Spider-Man, that makes it even more intriguing and powerful.
Oh, yeah. Well, you don't really know that until, what was it, Secret Marvel team up?
Well, it's
like 286.
It's in the 80s. It's like another 10, maybe even 15 years. But like
Untold Tales, is that what it's called?
Oh no, well, I mean, it was revealed in ASM, and then like you learned about it in the Spider-Man and Mary Jane. I forget what that comic is called. I know people are kicking me in the face, but like it's a
Isn't it Puma in it?
Well, the Puma is in the issue, yeah. In fact,
yeah.
like when she tells him, "I know your secret, I know you're Spider-Man," and then like Black Cat swings in, and she's like, "Oh, it's all true." But the comic book that revealed how she found out, basically, she saw him jump out as Spider-Man the night Uncle Ben died.
Right.
That's in Spider-Man. I don't remember what it's called. Okay, Josh is going to be like ripping his like what little hair he has out, but I'm trying to find where's my Mary Jane collection.
I thought it was Untold Tales.
Oh, Untold Tales Spider-Man. It does have that scene, but that's not the first time we learned about it. Parallel Lives.
Oh,
It took me way too long to remember. I say remember to find that out, but yeah, Parallel Lives is where we learned that like she's known his identity for the whole time. And like, what do you think of that? Because that was a retcon. Like when you read the old issues, do you buy that she always knew who he was, or do you think it doesn't make sense?
That's interesting to think about. I think because now I know that is true. I think potentially when I read, I think about it. Sometimes I think it makes sense. I mean, he certainly does disappear a lot, and she very much goes along with it, so I think in that case it does work out. I don't know if I can think of any particular instance where it blatantly does not.
The only time that I know, and this again, Josh, I'm talking about this, is like at Betty and Ned's wedding that Betty takes so seriously.
Well, as anyone would who's getting married.
Until the honeymoon. When, trouble, I think Cyclone shows up or some villain shows up and Peter runs off and Mary Jane screams out loud, "Peter, where is Peter?" And if she knows he's Spider-Man, that's not a nice thing to do. But besides that, it does generally track, I think, especially when she kind of puts on that party girl facade. Later, Dan Slott hates that retcon, but I don't care. I think it makes it interesting. It just makes her. It does make her. I mean, maybe it's cheating and making her an interesting character that way, but I still like the character, and I like when working off that knowledge of ASM 122, where she comforts him after Gwen dies, that really makes it stronger, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, would it really change the nature of her character if she didn't know? I mean, is she not as interesting without that detail?
I mean, I guess people. I don't know. I mean, I guess at the time when that issue was written, it was on the knowledge that she didn't know. People still liked it enough. I'm not aware of people who were. I know people were writing in letters, wanting Peter to ditch Gwen and get with Mary Jane. We used to read those on ASM Classics, so she was a popular character. So I don't know. I'm not sure what people thought that were reading that, and then a decade later found out that she always knew Spider-Man.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Spider-Man's virginity was debated at one point on the Spider-Man crawl space.
Here we go.
And you knew this was coming, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
No, I don't want to talk about his virginity, but I guess I'm going to. Actually, no, my only question here, because I don't want to know. Some people believed on that show that he and Mary Jane did it.
In this story?
In this scene. What do you think? Yep.
Are these people who think this over the age of 13?
Everyone's over the age of 13 on Spider-Man Crawl Space.
Did they seriously think no? No, come on.
That was one of them. One of them said that they believed that he lost his V card here. Right here at the scene. I'm
pitching the bridge of my nose. He's sobbing over his Gwen died that day. This isn't a porn parody. Come on. I
mean, sometimes people do strange things in their grief. Remember Tim and Cassandra?
What? No.
Cassandra Sands. You did not let me finish, sir. Cassandra Sandsmark.
Oh yeah, well that was after that was after time had passed but the wounds were so fresh and he was trying to clone him and they were not in their right minds. It wasn't an hour later before Connor was even buried where they were like, well, nobody's here.
Oh my god! What? Who writes?
Exactly.
That's so sick. That's so
yeah,
sick.
It sickens me. Okay, guys. If everybody's thinking that if Alex Evangeli's out there to call him out and think, well, maybe Peter and Mary Jane first got together that issue. Literally, I think it's no longer than 2 hours after she had died. Peter is sobbing his brains out, and Mary Jane's like comforting him. They're not going to then go in the shower. Then that's that's just. that's not how the human psychology operates unless Peter wasn't, because I think that he and Gwen were like vague fiancés and stuff. Like, and if any writer had that idea, it's certainly yet to be verbalized in public consciousness because they keep that crap to themselves. And it's funny because like Josh actually wrote me a list of people he believes Peter slept with, and he wanted me to read them out.
Oh boy.
But he counts for like the times when they would have, and when he first got together with Mary Jane, that would not have been ASM 122. Did you think that?
No, I think I took that argument. I thought about it and like thought about it in the sense of let me read this with that in mind, and it didn't make sense to me.
That's just not. I mean, because there's no way that would happen. And if it did, it was never like evidenced. There was no evidence for it. Why am I arguing about this? It doesn't happen. It's a stupid idea.
I'm not sure. It really got you going, didn't it?
That happens on the show a lot.
I guess so. It's not my fault.
Isn't it?
Wow. Well, we've reached it. And it seems like Mary Jane has topped this list. Is that saying something deep down? Subconsciously?
I did notice that a lot of my choices were with her. And I absolutely did not mean to set out to do it that way. But my Spider-Man fandom does not live and die off of Peter and Mary Jane being together. I've heard a lot of people who kind of like behave that way. Like, as an issue of ASM isn't good unless Peter and Mary Jane are making out all in every page. And it's like, okay, come on, dude. Like,
it's not a romance comic.
Yeah, I don't read it for that crap. And like, I mean, I feel that like I was forced to have an opinion about Peter and Mary Jane during War More Day. But like, yeah, no, I do like them together. They are my favorite. They are my ideal pairing, and they're probably my favorite Spider-Man or comic book couple, if I'm being honest. Like, when I compare it to everybody else, yeah, I think that like the two of these characters together, I enjoy the most and want to see together the most, more than any other character. So yeah, I'm more of a Mary Jane Peter guy. I have opinions on the idea of him and Gwen, but I'll let you go. What do you think?
I also am a Mary Jane and Peter guy. I'm just kidding. A Mary Jane and Peter girl. They are, in the Spider-Man verse, my OTP for sure. I think that's just growing up with not only the 90s, but the things that I've read, being most interested in Mary Jane. And Gwen was not really on my radar. I mean, I knew of her, but I think Amazing Spider-Man was really what brought her more to the forefront. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Spider-Man 3 is what brought her to the forefront, but then Amazing Spider-Man a little bit more so. And then when I started reading back from the very beginning, I did gain a greater love and appreciation for that character. Like, I actually do enjoy Gwen Stacy as a character. I think she is a little two-dimensional in the beginning, but I think she develops a little bit more. And I did like that relationship, and I was really heartbroken when I saw it actually play out on the page in print when she was killed off. But I think given the longevity of Mary Jane and Peter, given the depth of it, and the struggles that they go through, but the perseverance and love that they show towards each other in their relationship, I think clearly that's the relationship that deserves to be there. And that's why One More Day was so heartbreaking for me. And Brand New Day, I was reading it in the hopes that they would get back together, or maybe Mary Jane remembered something, I don't know. But so that's been the disappointment, and why I've not really been reading modern Spider-Man titles, because it's just not, it doesn't feel the same for me.
Well, also like when it comes to like his relationship problems, I mean, like the cliche thing to say about Spider-Man is, oh, he's just like any other guy, he has problems with girls and stuff. And the reason why the marriage was just taken away wasn't really because it seems well, but like this sort of resuscitation of relationship problems was really shallow. Like, I never had a problem with Carly Cooper, but like that whole thing was meant to end up where he breaks up with her, which is at the end of Spider Island. Like, it wasn't really meant to be a relationship. It was meant to be a cliched element of superhero comics. With Spider-Man, for the first like 30 or 40 years, it felt as though he was kind of developing as people do, and a lot of comics felt that way. I like Ariana quite a bit, but I never really objected to the end of her relationship with Tim, because that's just how things kind of turned out. I do think it was a little contrived how they broke up, in the way that like she kind of broke up with him out of the blue. But like,
oh, here we go.
But I'm never like hating Stephanie Brown.
I hope not. She's pregnant. You should relate to her more.
Quiet, you. I mean, with Gwen Stacy, I think it's because Gwen Stacy. The first thing you learn about Gwen Stacy is that she died. So I never read the comics. Sad that she died. I was like, okay, there's that. So when you said that you were kind of depressed and you felt bad about it, I was like, what, really? But I can't put my head in the mind of somebody who reads a certain way. But I don't know. Like I hope I've demonstrated tonight that like there's enough stories, and you have too, with Peter and Mary Jane that really roots for that relationship.
No,
and people at large who aren't familiar with Spider-Man comics, they think that his girlfriend's Mary Jane Watson because of the movies. So, and the Spider-Man game is coming out on PS4. Mary Jane's going to be there. So, like,
oh, so excited!
I wish I had a PS4. A friend of mine was texting me like, "Do you have a PS4?" And I was like, "I wish." I don't mind people who enjoy Gwen Stacy. I don't really buy. Like, I've heard people say, "Oh, I was always a Gwen person," and I was like, "No, you weren't." Like, not until 2012. But like, because I don't think that like her original character had as much personality as Mary Jane did. And in most modern stories that write Gwen Stacy, write a completely different character, like Spider-Man Blue, like Marvel's. But that's what these characters kind of afford to be enjoyed differently. But I just think that like Spider-Man and Mary Jane make a really engaging twosome, whether they're married or not. And I'm kind of like not stuck on the married thing, but like if I had my way about it, they would at least be like she would at least
together.
Together, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my obviously I don't know what their shipper name is, but like yeah, I like Peter and Mary Jane. It's a lot like Clark and Lois. It's hard.
PJ.
It's hard to like see anybody else. PJ. I like pajamas.
Yes, that works out. So would you put Black Cat as 3 for you, or you think you would even put Black Cat above Gwen?
Yeah, I probably would because I think Black Cat. I hate how she's been written in the last decade. Although she's been better written now, like she showed up in Miles Morales' comic, and because she's kind of a mob boss, and she's interesting. But I was personally, I mean, I think the birth of my feminism was like what they did to her Brand New Day. I wrote this whole essay on it. I like the idea of a strong character who uses her sexuality calculatedly and has a lot more to her, like Poison Ivy. But like in those comics, it was just kind of just men writing what they always wanted to read as teenagers.
Like her taking a milk bath.
Yeah, because catches and then having animals licking it while she's still in it, because that's hypoallergenic. But like I talked about in like on my list, like the original stuff by Al Milgrom and Bill Mantlo and Peter Parker. One of my maybe it's an honorable mention, but one story I really wanted to put on my list was from Marvel Knights, where
the 12-issue series. Oh, such a good series.
Yeah, but the Dodsons and Mark Millar, because Peter and Mary Jane are married then, but I really like the kind of love triangle there is because Black Cat still loves him. And it's not done in an immature... I kind of fight for that version because I like the idea that like there's always going to be sort of like tension with them and Black Cat because there's shared feelings, and Black Cat is even kind of sensitive towards it. And I really enjoyed that. In that miniseries, I like when she like claws the Vulture and says, "Touch my ex again, and I'll kill you." I think it's pretty cool.
Would you put Betty Brant above or below Gwen
the only
Stacy?
place I would put Betty Brant is on a dartboard. No.
Oh, you know who's really upset right now that you said that?
Nobody. Oh yeah. No, I mean, like, I don't know how I feel about Gwen Stacy. I love Emma Stone. I like before Candice Patton, she was like my celebrity crush. I don't dislike Gwen Stacy. I'm not one of those guys that says, "Oh, Gwen was crazy. She was a horrible character." I'm not one of those posers. But like, she really kind of affects to me a generic Silver Age girlfriend that in any other story with her in it feels to me retroactive. So I don't dislike her, but I feel that like maybe it's because the other characters had more stories. Like Betty Brant back in the day was pretty whiny, but like she wasn't. I feel that maybe even she had kind of more interesting stories.
Well, yeah, it's pretty interesting if you leave your husband and go sleep with somebody else.
Twice. With Peter and Flash, yeah. Yeah, I would say Mary Jane, Black Cat, Betty Brant, because I think that's more interesting. After that, I mean, that's probably also my problem. Because I guess Gwen would be fourth because I like Gwen more than like Carly Cooper, more than like Deborah Whitman, more than I like
Michelle Rodriguez.
Michelle Rodriguez, more than I like I don't know, April K or whatever her name is. Yeah, like I would say Gwen rounds out the top 4, but she's number 4, and that's not because I hate her; it's because I feel the other characters are more interesting.
Final question for you.
Okay.
Would Peter Parker date Lisa or Min-May?
Would you want to answer first?
This is an interesting because Min-May's similar to MJ.
Really?
Well, if only in the performance aspect. Yeah, professionally. And but she's a ditz in real life, and Mary Jane's only pretending to be a ditz. I think he'd go for Lisa.
I think he'd go for Lisa too. I actually think that he's somewhat similar, or Rick is somewhat similar to him. I don't know if Lisa would put up with him ditching to be Spider-Man all the time, though. I'm not sure how that would work out. I think he'd probably get.
Maybe he'd be the pineapple salad guy.
Roy? Shot in the back. I think that like he could like for lack of a better phrase, ride Min-May out longer. But I'm not. He would probably get sick of her too. Which Batgirl do you think would be good for Spider-Man? Barbara, Stephanie, or Cassandra?
I think Barbara. I think she's, she's got like a little blur of Mary Jane and Gwen because I think you have that intelligence level, but she also, she can have fun as well.
She's
I think Steph is a little too bubbly potentially for him, and maybe a little too ditzy blonde. And then Cass? I don't know. I have a hard time shipping Cass, except, of course, with Clayface. That's my OTP for Cass. But I know that you're... Yeah, I know. But I really do. I do. I think Barbara would be a good one.
Did you read the latest issue of Detective Comics?
No, not yet.
Text me when you read that.
Oh, no. I said I had... Dustin was asking, what are we thinking is going to happen in, like, the annual or something? And I guess he was expecting us to do, like, major plot points. And I said, I expect if Clayface is going to die, he's going to die in Cassandra's arms. And he goes, that's not what I was looking for, but okay.
I won't say anything.
Oh, no.
But I think you're right. I think Barbara is actually more speed.
Yeah, that's a good match. And red hair, too.
Yeah. Has he dated anybody else with red hair besides Mary Jane? Well, I mean, Carly's inconsistent, so I don't know. I wouldn't say her, but yeah, him and Barbara Gordon. I'm sure that there's a fanfic out there where.
Oh, I forgot about Silk too. Silk would be similar to Cassandra Cain. But she's very different character-wise. Well, no, she's awkward though, like Cass is, but just awkward for a different reason because she was like locked up in a bunker for years, whereas Cass, But yeah.
Cass had a childhood. Yeah, I've been to read the Silk comic.
Yeah. Well, according to Josh, I guess we're forced together, so it's awkward whenever they meet. But yeah, I've read the whole thing because now it's done, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed Silk.
Harry doesn't really read comics, but he did read Silk because it was like an Asian hero, and he said that like he enjoyed it, but he did when I told him or I suggested him to read Cass Cain, he said he enjoyed her better. So take that.
Oh dear. Yeah. It wasn't a competition, sir.
It turned out to be.
Here's the thing. I'm not... When Batgirl number 1 comes, I'm going to ask Shagalicious to recap it with me.
Don't get that guy anywhere near Cassandra Cain. I don't want to hear Shag, she's hot Matthews, or Tom, everything sucks Paneries anywhere near my Cassandra Cain comics.
No. Oh, my goodness.
I will pay you half my paycheck if you... let me on that podcast.
Okay. Good to know in the future if I'm struggling for cash.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, this has been delightful.
As always, I'm glad this met our hopefully this met our expectations.
Well, did it meet your expectations?
I was worried because like when you were like threatening like like my number 1. Now I wasn't watching the MTV show. I was like, you can't be serious.
I wasn't allowed to watch MTV until then.
Oh man.
You were worried of just my number 1? That's
well, at that point, I like there's a faintest cool shot of sweat in my brow. Where I was like, I think Stella's lost her damn mind. But, no, it was fun.
Probably pretty close, yeah. No, I also had fun, and we didn't have any overlap, really.
Yeah, this time I expected there none to be.
As you thought?
Yes. Hopefully you'll be interested to read JMS Spider-Man.
I already am. Yeah, so now I guess I just need to skip 200 or 300 issues.
Yeah, they're not worth it.
Oh, I don't think that's true.
You read JMS Spider-Man, and I will absolutely read Mary Jane Loves Spider-Man.
Oh, it's the opposite. Spider-Man loves Mary Jane, but it sounds good. But I think that'd be more of an investment for me. You only have 28 issues. Mine would be like 4. You said 6 times 19. How many volumes? 18?
Oh, not 18.
Oh, maybe you said 9.
13.
Oh, okay, 36. Probably 36 issues. Okay, that's not too bad.
Well, what can I say? That's how it turns out.
Whoa! Okay, Josh. Where can our lovely listeners find you?
Well, lately you can actually find me on the Batman universe. I guess in this recording, I actually guest wrote the latest issue. I actually guest reviewed the latest issue of Batman. I gave it a sterling 3 out of 5 batarangs. I'm on the Gotham Chronicle with the oft-mentioned Josh and our bud Jan, talking about the show that I hate, Gotham. And I have been doing a series of essays on the character of Tim Drake, why we love the Drake, I think it's called. And those have been a lot of fun. And I'm actually about to cover the era where he goes on from Ariana to Stephanie. Hopefully I'll try.
Yeah, let's talk about that, shall we?
Absolutely. But my main gig is my podcast that I do with Harrison Shoot, Questions, We Don't Have Answers. It is a show where we basically try to figure out things that have yet to be figured out in terms of like social interaction and modern politics and all that kind of stuff. We wear our liberal card on our sleeve, and so it is very biased, but we also are very much interested in kind of getting in any kind of conversation, no matter what the topic is. So we invite a lot of people to kind of contribute their thoughts. We have a Facebook page. Our website is qnoanswers.com. There's that. Beyond that, I mean, I'm ostensibly part of the Next Dimension still and the Clone Side Chronicles, but like those shows are so inconsistently recorded that these are the shows you can kind of rely upon and appear regularly. So please check them out. And thank you once again, lovely Miss Stella, for having me on here.
Why? Oh, you're welcome. Why did you? I mean, the alternative is a nightmare that I never want to have. Why are you, the nightmare being Joshua Lapham Bertoni, in case you didn't know, why were you invited on the Batman universe for that one random episode? One random issue. What's the point?
Well, Dustin's doing these sort of specials again. It's basically the Batman specials, but like not. Like we recorded something about the Dark Knight Returns Last Crusade, which I actually genuinely liked. You know, I really enjoyed that. So we did that. We recorded that as of this recording last night. I think that like the regular reviewer for Batman couldn't get it in time, so he asked me to review that, and I wrote up the review for, I believe it was 39, where he teams up with Wonder Woman for some reason. But yeah. Be on the lookout for that. It's me, Dustin, and Ian Miller talking about The Last Crusade, which I think it's the best Batman Frank Miller work since Batman Year One.
I can hardly believe it.
Did you read that?
Oh, maybe I'm not thinking about. I'm thinking about Dark Knight 3.
God no. It's the one where like it tells what happened to Jason Todd and how Batman grew to retire. Like I was surprised.
I don't know that I read that.
It came out last year. It was a one shot, and John Romita Jr. is actually the artist, and like I honestly, genuinely enjoy it. It's actually probably one of my favorite stories that came out last year. I'm sorry, 2016.
Okay. It sounds familiar. I guess I just didn't read it. I mean, I have to prioritize my time.
I absolutely understand. That's not what I'm telling you to read, because like I know we all have got to do something else, but like it's good.
Yeah. Whew, boy. Well, here we are at the end.
Goodbye, farewell, ad vitas, and goodbye.
Goodbye. Yes, you can send any questions or comments, as always, to batgirl@oracle@gmail.com. We brought up a lot of controversial topics here in this show. So if you want to answer the age-old question of does Peter Parker need to be with Mary Jane or Gwen, you can please write in. If you have this strong desire to say that, yes, Peter Parker did in fact sleep with Mary Jane at the end of ASM 122, then please address that to Donovan because I don't want to read it. And if you... Are there any other controversial things we brought up?
I'm sure that people will jump at you for hating Tom Holland.
I said he's growing on me.
That means... I know what that says, but like people hear hate, so take that.
I don't hate him. Each time I watch that movie, it gets better. But it was just it really hurt. You could become invested in a character and an actor, and then to have that ripped away, it's really hard. It's really hard. I can't be alone in this. Anywho, you can also find the show on Google Play and Stitcher, like the show on Facebook, or follow it on Twitter at Batgirl the Oracle. If you care to, you can follow The Liar, the Batman universe, on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support TBU by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And until next time...
Swing on, web swingers.
Whoa! Do-do-do-do!
Just plain Barbara Gordon, masquerading for a lark as she rides into the night on her special Batgirl cycle. Who knows? Is the dynamic duo destined to become the triumphant trio? Only time will tell us more about this dazzling daredoll.
I love a happy ending, don't you?
You know who's on the other line right now?
Dustin?
Josh, of course.
Well, yeah, we were talking for the last hour, and I was like, you have to help me do this list now. I'm kidding.
Oh, but, my!
Well, we were kind of going back and forth as like what would count as like romantic or platonic or whatever. And I said to him, you should like email to Stella your list, and he's like, well, I can't do it in the next 10 minutes because I'm driving.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, he can do it retroactively, and then I talk about it on the next episode.
I think this is one of those, every now and then we have a shipper spotlight where our choices are similar, like for like the Hawkgirl and Green Lantern one and the Uran one. I think this is going to be one where we're going to have entirely different choices.
Maybe I'll make you angry with my choices.
What?
I told you I was picking obscure relationships just to make you upset.
I mean, you made me upset on plenty of things, but like Spider-Man, I don't know.
How dare you? What do you mean?
Well, like in the last episode, you were like, there's this issue of Robin. Robin finally goes after Stephanie Brown. So clearly he was cheating on Ariana, and I was like, tap, 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 click, 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 click.
I come on! How can you deny that?
I clap back on your comment section, so I'm sure you'll read that out.
Why, better. I called you out.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, is she doing this on purpose? Like, is she serious?
And then when we were talking about Daredevil or something, and I said, "Oh, sounds like Tim," and you said, "What?"
Oh yeah, I think Dick Grayson. I think yeah.
It was, yeah.
About his taste for the women.
Oh man.
Women's with a Z. Are you including anything from the MTV Spider-Man show?
Why do you want me to?
Have you seen that show? Have you seen it?
Oh, absolutely. I own it.
Awesome.
I own it. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that too. We were talking about a lot of like different versions, and like I know that you're gonna have me beat. I don't know what your list is, but like I know you're gonna have me beat on like the Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane thing because I've just not read enough of that. But like I'm wondering if it's gonna be like number 1 through 5. Where it's like it's gonna be like 2 hours of me hearing about this book and it's shipper garbage.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! No, I think so.
That sounds awfully coy. So.
Well, I have to be. We like this is a challenge.
Okay. So before you move on, can I go to the bathroom real quick?
I thought you were about to ask me this really big, important question.
Well, that is a very big, important question.
I guess you absolutely.
Yeah, just a minute. I'll be right back.
You're back.
Yes, I am. Oh, what was that? Were you watching more Smallville AMVs?
No. I haven't watched those for a while. I've been watching anime AMVs.
Ooh. Actually, I've been watching some more of those too, because some people on YouTube are really talented in putting music together.
Absolutely. That's how I learned about the citrus. I had to...
I was at the citrus.
When you laugh like that, you remind me of a dirty old man.
Who's to say I'm not? I was at a not Barnes & Noble, but Books A Million yesterday, and I looked. They had.
How dare you?
What are you, my supervisor?
Oh, that is the betrayal of the highest order.
I like how you always wanted me to be like this communist, whatever, for my loyalties. But no, my mom and my aunt were at their hairdresser, so I was like at the nearest bookstore, which was that. And they had volume 1 of Citrus, which is literally the first 3 episodes. It's like, so I've already watched a whole volume of the manga.
Yeah.
So, why do you kiss me? I don't know what to do.
Oh my goodness. But then I saw this scene where a guy kisses the dark-haired girl, and the blonde-haired girl is like peeking around the corner, and she gets really upset and runs away.
I think it's the first episode, yes. It's pretty scandalous.
So
it's not like racy necessarily, but there's a lot of oh my god, that just happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think they're going to get together at the end?
Man, if they don't, it would be kind of depressing. But so far, it's been very intense. It's like every scene every episode. There's a scene from Do You Remember Love? That coffee scene. It's like that every episode.
Oh my god.
A lot of what Harry calls emotional violence, where people were kind of being inconsiderate towards people's feelings.
Wow. Okay. That could be our shipper spotlight in 2019.
Well, it could always end up bad, so we shall see.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'll be there. I'll watch it, and then I'll say, Donovan, what have you done?
Yeah, like you did with Death Note.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yep. I have yet to watch the live-action film.
Oh, on Netflix? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you told me that it's only an hour and a half, so to just get it out, but I haven't brought myself to it.
Yeah, it's easy to knock out, but it sucked.
I really liked Bright, though.
Really, I heard that sucked as well, but I've not seen it.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's getting a sequel.
I enjoyed it.
I
thought it was really good.
Well, it's Big Willie, but
it is Big Willie. Yep. Enjoy Edgerton. There was something else I was going to tell you. Oh, yeah, I need to watch Ned Flanders sometime. I guess I'll be texting you a lot when I do that.
You need to watch the episodes that I recommended?
Yeah, I will say I'm about to watch some Simpsons.
When is your presentation or when is the project due?
February 5th, so I've got time, but I now have God's Not Dead #1, God's Not Dead #2. Save. For research, mind you, Saved and Easy A.
Oh, I've seen it. Well, I've seen parts of Easy A.
I've seen Easy A, but it's been a while and I don't remember. I think actually Allie or AJ Michaelchik was a Christian, but it's been so long. That was one of Emma Stone's first little feature there, so that should be interesting going back.
Yeah, I think like the ending, I think, not the whole thing. But
you said you're off? Are you off next week?
Oh, I go back to work Wednesday.
Okay. I was going to say maybe we could rabbit some Simpsons. Would you watch those
Absolutely!
with me? Okay.
But when you watch the God's Not Dead films, you have to message both us and myself and Josh, because Josh and I
afterwards
discovered those.
I know you talk about it, so I can't wait.
It's an outrageous.
And then
film.
the other person, yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see the second one. Well, actually, I didn't really want to. I'm like, is it worth it? And the lady's like, well, I liked it. I'm like, okay.
It would be one. I was like, it's not one where I don't think you would get the entertainment factor that we do, kind of ironically, but it would evoke a reaction because it kind of has the whole Christians versus the world kind of perspective. But it's really, I find it to be very mean spirited and not great.
Yeah, against the peoples. Okay. The peoples of other beliefs, anyway.
Yeah. There's a Chinese guy. It's you believe in God? I have no son. And it's I don't think Chinese people act like that. But what are you gonna do?
Oh dear. Yeah. What dear are you gonna? Well, anywho, back to Spider-Man.
And now back to Spider-Man on Fox Kids.
Oh man, you know, I have to say, since you just did that, that Spider-Man the Animated Series ended abruptly, in my opinion, because you got like that 5-part Secret Warriors, and Madam Web sends Spider-Man off, you know, to go find the real Mary Jane that's lost in that little digital controller thing, the Phantom Zone projector. And so then, right after that, was Unlimited, Spider-Man Unlimited. And so here I was thinking that I was going to pick up and those two would be together. But the first episode, they're together, and then he's sent off into another dimension.
Well, he voluntarily goes to, Counter Earth to fight the furries in his spanking new Reed Richards costume. But I think they are married in the first episode.
Yeah, but it was just, for a shipper like me, it was sad.
Yeah, it was disgusting. I love the intro, like the opening sequence of that show. This show sucks.
It's been a while, but I remember it was not as good.
Yeah, and it was done when Marvel was bankrupt, not only financially but creatively.
Oh man. Oh gosh. Okay. I always liked in Spec Spidey how his little light would shine.
Oh yeah.
At the very end. And I think one time that it was like a little heart at the very end of the episode.
Yeah, because like there was that. There was like I think his head turned into a football, which is kind of creepy.
Arnold.
And then like when he had the black costume, it was like a web line, and then it was like black and white webbing, which is cool.
Yeah.
There was a video that compared like when the symbiote was on Peter Parker in the '90s show, and then when it was on Peter Parker in the Spectacular Spider-Man show, and I was like, man, they're both cool.
Yes, Venom's one of my favorites. He is my favorite villain, and then Shocker's actually. I have a very special place in my heart.
Ha! Joke. Yeah.
You're sick.
Venom is my favorite, and I think Goblin's my second favorite.
I can't believe it. I didn't know this about you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Venom's just... My brother, Denmark and I have actually been talking a lot on the phone about, like, this Tom Hardy Venom movie. Because, like, my brother, they can't do this without Spider-Man, can't they? It would be pointless.
Well, there was that thing that Tom Holland is going to appear.
I really hope that's true and not a rumor. You can't...
Well, it was coming from the director, though.
Okay, good.
But he just didn't say when it was going to happen, because they're like, oh, is it like an end credit scene?
I mean, like, you gotta do the story where it's on Spider-Man, then it's on Eddie Brock, who hates Spider-Man, and then do whichever you want. But that origin can't change, because otherwise it's just not... It turns into, like, the Halle Berry Catwoman movie at that point, without that.
Oh, no. Yeah. See, that's why I don't want to skip to JMS, because I'm like right about to encounter Venom.
I love the Venom. Oh.
In my reading, so that's why I want to continue reading my thing. I just need to stop reading my books and for a month only dedicate my time to Spider-Man.
You got to read. I mean, when you get to it, like the first story of Carnage is awesome. It's so much. It is fun comic book stuff, like where Spider-Man and Venom fight Carnage, and he's they're no match for him. It's like a 3-parter, and it's so much fun. I every time I read, I have a smile on my face. But yeah, we grew up with Venom, and all the older people don't like Venom. It's like whatever, man. Like he rocks. He's hardcore. Did you play you played Maximum Carnage, right?
Maybe.
Ah, okay. It's fun.
Yeah, I think I could potentially buy it since you got me that little system.
Oh yeah. Do you have a lot of games for that?
And play it on my own. I have, I've got all the ones that were built in. I've actually been looking. I haven't done it for a little while, though, because I was going to get Aladdin, or The Lion King, but those are kind of expensive because I guess they're well loved. But yeah, I should look for the Spider-Man ones.
Yeah, there's Maximum Carnage, there's Separate Incision Anxiety, Spider-Man versus the Kingpin, Spider-Man X-Men versus Arcade, and I think like the '90s Spider-Man show had a game. So yeah, lots of fun.
Well, I'm glad we got to do this.
I am as well. I thought this
I hope it met your expectations.
I will say it went by for me quickly, but I look at the timer; it's pushing 3 hours.
Yes, well, you did go to the potty, so I'll be able to cut some stuff out.
That wasn't 3 hours long, was it? No, yeah, it was fun.
It was a half an hour.
I did not come up with this list at the last minute. I promise. I didn't. I will.
It really seemed you're like making for time. You're like, I hear clicking on your computer. I'm like, this guy's not ready to go.
No, I was trying to figure out like how to speak the transition, like okay. My number this, my number that. I will admit that like I wasn't finished my list today. I was trying to figure out like the number 5, but I had like all of them in my head. But no, I wasn't gonna juke you on this one. No way. I've
already decided what next year's gonna be.
Boca, please can you keep my secret? キラキラと輝く未来私はどんな風に映っているのほらほらと手招く未来これからどんなことが起こるの目に見えているものが全てで笑い
Either it's Young Justice, The Simpsons, or
It's not going to be The Simpsons. I promise you, I'm not watching 500 episodes of a show.
I've not seen 500 episodes of the show yet. Honestly, after the 11th season, just stop. Because it's a terrible show now. But oh man. We can find like the sauciest Yuri anime and talk about like which time did they tongue kiss was your favorite?
Oh my gosh. Well, you remember now that well, I ship Bart and Lisa, of course.
I thought you learned your lesson with that.
I know I did.
That's awful.
Because you don't like it. I know.
They're yellow children.
What? I know they're young children. Well, I think Lisa's a lesbian at heart. Why are you laughing? I think she is. Even in that little film role, she had like 2 relationships.
Yeah.
One of them was like a polyamorous relationship with 2 women.
One year was with a woman, and the next year was with another woman, like both of them at the same time. I love that joke.
Yes, it's very odd.